Monday, degenerates. Welcome back home to the Die Hard MMA podcast, your favorite stop on Monday nights. We're talking UFC Vegas 98 this week. And so as you can tell, I have lost the Baby Blues t-shirt. I have no idea where it's at this point. It could be crumpled up in a dumpster somewhere, and that's just the way it is these days. So I had to pull out the big guns. We got to shift things up. We got to change the juju around a little bit. So I broke out the Chase Hooper Round 3 Memorial t-shirt. Hopefully that gives us some good vibes moving forward a little here, because the betting is just ain't cutting it. It's just not doing it, okay? I'm pretty upset because I think I did a damn good job of breaking down UFC 307. I think I had a really read on a lot of the fights on UFC 307, and somehow I'm still sitting here on Monday with my pockets turned out. I'm really upset, you guys, and the biggest thing I am upset about is that I worked my way to a Court McGee bet. It was a late ad on this one, and I thought, you know what? I can't resist this. The line is wrong. I'm always trying to be on the other side of Tim Means, and I even got myself towards the submission angle, but what did I do? I got fancy. I played sub round 2 and sub round 3. The numbers were astronomical. Never in a million years did I think Court McGee was just going to take Tim down and wash him on the mat. I could not believe that sub came so easily and so early. If I had played the sub prop instead of round 2, round 3, we have a winning night. I would have had to go find the Baby Blues t-shirt, because we would be sitting here in profit with an 8-1 prop that came home. Did that happen? No, it didn't. The judges were on crack at UFC 307. We had some just brutal, agonizing split decisions. We got a little lucky with the refereeing and the officiating in the Cesar Almeida fight. I will take that, absolutely. But the Jose Aldo fight, man, as the king of bantamweight, your king of bantamweight, I have to address this fight, because I said all week that the plus money on Jose Aldo felt like a trap. It felt like they were just dangling it out there for us to come grab. And I didn't care. Because everything I could tell with my eyes and my ears, all of it said that Jose Aldo was still the side in that fight. And folks, I think he won it. I think he won that fight. And I've had some people come and message me and be like, bro, Mario Bautista controlled that fight. And it's like, yeah, he did, but that's not how they score fights these days. They're lying to me when they tell me that the scoring criteria in 2024 is damage, because every time I bet on the fighter who does more damage, I lose a split decision. Every freaking time. So my best UFC division for betting is the bantamweight division. Like I said, I am the self-proclaimed king of bantamweight. I'm not taking this L. I'm not holding that. The judges robbed us. Jose Aldo won the fight. I'm declaring it now, and I don't care what the record says. I expect Mario Bautista to be thrown to the wolves in his next fight. Please and thank you. How's everybody doing? Welcome into the show. We've got my guy Dixon Cider. We got Grateful Dude, Air Dog, my man Dream. We got Aaron Harlock. Let's go. All right, everybody. Yeah. Dixon Cider saying Mario Bautista stole my shirt. No freaking kidding, man. It was oh my Lord. It's like a 6.5 unit swing. I'm down like 2.5 units on the event. And if Aldo gets the split decision, instead of being down 3.5, I'm up like 3.5. So like, it's very frustrating to have that big of a swing on one fight, especially when you disagree with the decision, man. That's so brutal. That's the game we play. And it just, I talk to you guys about this all the time. Variance in MMA. What's up, Wheezy? Thanks for joining the show, my friend. Variance in MMA betting is insane. Like, we're masochists for doing this, for sitting here and gambling on fights in general. It's hard enough as is, but then you've got corrupt ass judges and weird refs who don't call out cheating and will let you get away with murder in the cage. Like, we are asking for pain. So on nights like UFC 307, a small losing night shouldn't be that big a deal. I had one or two things that really could have gone my way and it would have been a good night. That's no big deal. But when you're having the biggest losing year of your life, that shit stings a little harder than it probably should. And that's where I'm sitting here right now. So thankfully, I've got a fresh dumpster to dive straight into, and I've brought along a friend. I've brought along one of the best guests we've ever had on this show, one of my favorite people in the world to talk about MMA, somebody who has a mind that just doesn't quite work like anybody else's, and I say that in a positive manner. He has absolutely massive scores, and he's coming off some pretty damn good reads as well. So hopefully the juju will flow through the screen, and we'll get some winning going here this week, and none other than my boy, Liam Picks Fights. Liam, my friend, what is going on? How you doing today, man?
What's up, Clint? It's good to be back. Thank you for having me, my man. It's exciting. It's been a little while since we've been on the show, and I feel like you couldn't have booked me at a better time, brother. I was a little bit down this year. You know, I always try and be very transparent about my results, right? And I started the year off very hot. I think the last event where I went on like a nuclear run was Tatsuro Taira in the main event, right, against Alex Perez. That was the last event that was very, very good to me. And then we went on a little bit of a rough run where a lot of underdogs weren't winning. I just had a tough run with my props as well. So when underdogs aren't winning and the props aren't coming through, it's tough for me. That's where I tend to make my bread and butter. But last week, we hit Ryan's span. We told you it was going to be a sub. We told you it would be the high elbow guillotine. We said it would come early. And then on top of it, you know, we had the ends by sub just in case OSP was able to wiggle his way on top, get that bond-proof choke going. So cash 2 big plus money numbers there, and that was what paid for a winning night. Everything else was gravy. Roman Delidze was able to go out there and deliver plus 130. So I'm hopeful, my man, that we can keep the good energy rolling, brother.
I love it, Liam. I love it. So, man, I got to tell you, and just, you know, me kind of licking my wounds here. I was trying to play it tight last week. I historically do not do well on pay-per-view cards. I just don't. Okay. It's kind of a weakness in my game. I've recognized it. And especially with the losing skid that I'm on, I'm trying to tighten up a little bit so I can just stack a couple wins here. And so I thought we're going to be tight. We're going to keep it clean and make sure we get a dub. And the fights that I was looking at, like the span spot, I wanted to play span sub so bad. I wanted to lay the minus 160 on span inside the distance. And I'm like, I'm just going to feel so stupid if he gasses after 3 minutes and gets choked out by OSP. So I thought, you know what? That's the kind of spot I'll leave alone right now. So I had the read. I had the look. I left the money on the table. I loved your call on Roman Delidze because I was this close to betting Kevin Holland, and a penny saved is a penny earned. I will pat myself on the back on that one. I dodged that bullet because I felt like both them were untrustworthy. And I guess when you got two untrustworthy guys like that, violence is never a bad option. And I thought about that. But I just could not get to putting my money on Roman Delidze. I have such a hard time doing that. But when that cage door closed, he looked two weight classes bigger than Kevin Holland. That's just a beautiful read to take advantage of a situation where you've got a much larger, violent man locked in the cage with a small, skinny toothpick of a guy. I feel bad for Kevin Holland's ribs, but just, again, a beautiful read by you, man. So I'm glad to hear that you got on track. I'm glad to hear that you hit some big plus numbers, and hopefully we can do that again this
You're right that they robbed our boy Aldo, by the way. I couldn't leave alone without saying that. I had Aldo, biggest bet of the night, I believe, 1 unit at plus 115, I want to say. And honestly, I think we were on the wrong side of some variance there. God bless Mario Bautista. You know, I'm never going to shit on a guy. Go get the win, get your money, but not getting many fans off of that, and also just didn't win the fight as far as I'm concerned. So God bless, man. I think if we're on those long-term, we win it. That's it.
I'm with you on that one. And that's where, like, I kind of have to center myself, right? I do my best to try to look back, and you always get the curmudgeons in the YouTube chat that yell at you every time you miss a bet. But I try to distinguish, was it a bad process? Was it a bad read? Was it a bad bet? And then, or in this case, was there just some bad variance? And I'm with you, man. I think Aldo won the fight. I think one of those judges was blind. Two of the judges were blind, apparently. And I feel like we absolutely should have gotten the decision there. And that's just the way shit goes sometimes. You know what I mean? So gotta take your licks and move on in that kind of a case, because I definitely feel like we were the right side there. Fender Jazz asking question: if and when they confirm / catch judging corruption, will it affect the fights and then be overturned to no contest? I got to tell you, Fender, the unfortunate truth of the situation is that we saw this happen with boxing, right? They turned everything into a spectacle. Draws became more common because, you know, run it back and let's make double the money with the fight again. And they're not going to catch anybody. You know, the Nevada State Athletic Commission, they're thieves, man. They try to take fighters' purses for shit like jumping on the cage, and they're beholden to nobody but themselves. So the UFC is essentially a slave to the Nevada State Athletic Commission, and they protect their people. So we're never going to catch anybody. Yeah, they're never going to put a judge on trial. They're never going to make them review bad scorecards. It's the unfortunate truth of the matter is that's the way MMA is headed. And I'm glad you brought it up because I've been thinking about it for a while and I've mentioned it a couple times, Liam. I am going to make damn sure that I'm betting on finishers these days. If somebody is going to go a full 15, or I feel like there's a chance it's going to go a full 15, I need to visualize them dominating. I'm not going to steer into these soft spots anymore where there's split decisions where they can just rob you blind whenever they want to, because they're getting more and more bold about it. And the only solution is to make damn sure that fight's not going the distance. And with the gloves these days, that seems to be a real thing. It's harder and harder because finishes just ain't happening the way they used to. So tough days, man. Tough days to find soft spots betting on MMA anymore.
To that end, Clint, I had predicted Marina Rodriguez was going to win the fight with Lucindo last week. And I didn't end up betting on the fight because I just thought it was probably going to the judges. It was probably going to be close. And what's the business interest to give it to the 37-year-old who's had a bunch of opportunities, or the much younger woman? And I think that people don't think about fights like that, but I try to. For me, I wouldn't recommend betting on public underdogs. I saw some people in the chat maybe give me a little grief for that. But what I'll say is this. Every fight is a unique circumstance. You know, was a public underdog, Jose Aldo, his last time out, right? He was in Rio. Everybody bet on him. He was a plus 135 and he won the fight. And it was another similar setup spot where he's fighting a guy with 14,000 followers that nobody's ever heard of, that's on a, decent win streak, but really isn't on his level. And I think that's what we saw. And so a close but clear 29-28 is still a clear 29-28. And Jose Aldo did better work in the fight. He won the second and third rounds. Only one guy got hurt. It's plain and simple for me that the right side was the plus money. And that's long-term always what I'm going to approach the sport as, because what you can do is control what you can control. What you can't do is control things like the judges and the referees. So you want to try and put yourself in the best positions, but you also want to be on plus money so you don't have to be right every time. That's what I always say.
I like it, man. I'm with you there. And it's a bummer because I love the way you think. I led the show off with that, right? I can't think like you. I can't. It fucks with my process every single time I've tried. And when I sit back and I'm like, man, but who do they want to win? I find myself missing. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where, like, in MMA, you've got to do what your body does, right? Like, you can't have a Wonder Boy Thompson suddenly calling up Bilal and teaching him how to wrestle. That's not how the guy's wired. I've tried to bet like other people, like yourselves. And don't get me wrong, there's always ways to learn and grow and improve. But I can't use it as a basis and heavyweight it the way that you do. You seem to be able to target that kind of stuff. And I just end up missing because it's not my style. So I love bringing people like you on the show that have a different style, that have a different attitude, a different approach. And we can absolutely learn from each other here in that way. Real quick, before we go ahead and get moving, Rope Lord saying the real thieves are the bookies for taking your bets. And I would disagree, Rope Lord, because we are gambling. And if we didn't have the bookies to take our bets, how would we make our money? So right now, obviously, yes, they're thieving me blind. I don't have pants on at the moment because I had to, go ahead and pay them so I could sprinkle on round 3 this week. But in general, we need somebody to actually accept the bet. So slight disagreement there. And Arg in the chat, and that's the way I'm feeling right now, saying bet Tisha talking about finishers. Hey, I told you guys last week, that angle was too strong. The double angle of retirement and new mom on Carla, I could never not bet Tisha in that spot. And that was a greasy ass fight. It was a greasy fight. But I called that out before I pulled the trigger on it as well. As usual, you guys know I'm a degenerate. I'll tell you what I'm betting on. Do what you want with your own damn money. I'm very grateful to have gotten the check mark next to that play right there. Let's go ahead and get into the show, though. We've been kind of waxing poetic here to start, and we got some fights to talk about, everybody. This is Home of Fight. Thank you for joining us on this Monday to go ahead and talk about these awesome fights. Fresh dumpster to dive into here. We are joined by Liam Picks Fights, one of my absolute favorite people in the industry. Make sure you support him out there. And thank you for swinging by, Pepe Silva in the chat. Love to see you here, my friend. First fight of the evening, Clayton Carpenter, and he takes on Lucas Rocha. And you guys know my backstory, my history here with Clayton Carpenter. I like this kid a lot. It's funny because he's an Arizona boy. He grew up training here, and I actually was in college way before the podcast days ever even started. I was in college, and I was grappling. I moved for school, and I moved near Power MMA and Fitness, and that was Ryan Bader's gym. When the boys down there, they broke off from the gym that they were training at, American Kickboxing Academy, and they started Power MMA and Fitness. And I'm just training there doing jujitsu, and I'm walking around, and there's this kid that's hanging out with the pros, Liam. And I mean, I swear he had to be like 9. He's like this tiny little kid, but he takes his shirt off, and I'm like, holy shit. Like, he looks like that mini Tarzan kid that went viral a long time ago. Like, he's shredded. He's got abs. He's jacked. He's built to hell. And I'm like, my God, I'm going to see that kid in the UFC someday. No shit. That was Clayton Carpenter. Like, not even joking. It was actually him. He's in the UFC. He's been training at a high level since he was a little child, with pros taking him under the wing. And now he's off Contender Series. He's moved over to the MMA lab, which I actually think was probably a really good move for him, just stylistically speaking. I couldn't pick a better spot for him. We know the vitamins in the water are strong over at the MMA lab. He's 1-0 off the Contender Series. They tried to book this kid with Steve Erceg in his last fight. Thank God that fell apart for his sake, because I don't think he's ready for someone like Steve Erceg based on what we've seen from that guy recently. But I do like how strong he is. He's a very good grappler. He's got really slick transitions. He's good back takes, really tight squeeze. He's going to be 3 inches taller with a 2-inch reach advantage here. Rocha is 17-1. This kid's got a similar off Dana White's Contender Series situation here. It's his UFC debut. And I like how fast this kid is. I like his movement. He's really quick. He's got fast hands. You know, he kind of got out-muscled on Contender Series and just kind of thrown around the cage, but it didn't bother him. He's got such great cardio. Round 2 starts, and he was rearing and ready to go. Timed a beautiful knee right up the middle on a takedown, put the dude out clean, walk off KO. I mean, it was glorious. Massive knee. So this guy's got Dana White's Contender Series. He's got Dana White's attention coming off Contender Series. This is a fun matchup between two guys, I think, that have a lot of upside, a lot of potential. Liam, I can't get how physically bullied Rocha got in Dana White's Contender Series out of my head. That's kind of the one spot here for me that I'm going, if you're getting a much naturally larger wrestling base against this kid, as long as you don't get over aggressive and wrestle yourself into cardio death, you should probably be able to grind this kid out. It seems like he's maybe one weight class up from where he naturally should be. So for me, it's Clayton Carpenter. But I like Lucas Rocha. I'm very excited to see what this kid brings to the table. What about you?
Yeah, this is an interesting fight for me. I think Clayton Carpenter has the best on-paper win of the two, right? If you look at the Edgar Chairez win, Edgar Chairez for me is like a fringe top 15 guy. For the flyweights, he's a solid guy. He's quite talented. I think he's the only guy to drop Tatsuro Taira in his UFC career. So you look at Edgar Chairez, I respect that win. He mostly just grinded him out on the ground. So it wasn't like blow your hair back. Oh, what a fantastic performance, but it was solid, right? It was everything you needed it to be. Got the contract on Contender, so he did everything right there. I just rewatched Lucas Rocha because I could not remember who he was. With no disrespect to him, right? He fought Davi Bittencourt last year, knocked him out. I just didn't remember the fight, so I went back and watched it. And to your point, Clint, he did get muscled around, but I think he's got good grappling instincts. I liked a lot of what I saw from him. Like, number one, sitting really back to the knee bar. Yeah, he looked for a couple different things that were clever to me. When he got in a couple dangerous situations, he never looked like he was panicked. The rear naked choke situation, for example, I thought his opponent basically sold out, right? Bittencourt was looking to sell out, get the grappling going, shot a bunch of takedowns, got more and more desperate over time. And so I think that Rocha basically laid out a game plan for how he could beat somebody like Clayton Carpenter, right? Which is like, try and make him wrestle, try and make him tired. And then if I can get him worn down, I can hurt him. I can be faster. I can be a little more clever on the feet. And that's kind of the way I see this fight going down. Two young guys, but I think Lucas Rocha, he's got a little bit more experience. He's a little bit more savvy, I feel. And the things that could go wrong, number one, it's a UFC debut. I talk about all the time. Before you bet on a UFC debut, just know you could be throwing your money away, because we've seen really good fighters just not have it on a debut. They go out there, underperform, don't look like themselves. So that's the word of caution, but it's in the familiar confines of the Apex Center. Looks like to me a competitive fight on paper. Both guys got skills, but you get one guy at plus money. You get another guy you have to pay for some chalk to find out. And for me, I'd probably prefer the guy with more experience at plus money.
Okay, fair enough.
Liam, but I'll do a little more tape. And I shout out to your boy from Arizona.
Absolutely. No, Liam thinking a little dogger pass to start the night off. I'm never hating the first fight of the night, having a live dog or maybe even an underlook on it. Yeah, man, in this spot, I got to go favor to pass on my side of things. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it just yet. I think Clayton Carpenter's got that work ethic. You know what I mean? And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, on Dana White's Contender Series, weren't they talking about that kid having to like take a bus to a ferry to an airplane, like to get where he was going to train? I mean, he's absolutely got like immigrant mentality as far as like not letting anything in the world stop him. And he's traveling distances to go get training. And that's the kind of shit that will make you human steel. You know what I mean? Like he will absolutely have ice in his veins. And it's a thing that you want to look for and bet on, but it also doesn't hurt to be living in a place where you've got access to Ben Henderson. And you know what I mean? Like, I kind of feel like Clayton Carpenter at this stage of his career is in a much more comfortable and high level training situation. So he might just be a little bit, one step ahead at this stage in his career.
The one thing I'll leave you with on Rocha, Clint, is look at his face after round one. He's just been in this insane, like, back and forth. They're scrambling. They're doing all this wrestling. And he stands up with a smile and looks at his corner like, this guy's screwed. And I was like, this guy's got some like sickness in his head where he's just trying to make people really tired. I feel like that is his ultimate advantage. So that's what I like about him. He's young. He's hungry. He seems like a psychotic fighter. But aside from that, it's a very competitive fight. Make no mistake. I think Clayton Carpenter deserved favorite. I would just make him minus 125 or so.
I like that. Fair enough. Line is a little bit too wide. And you know what, man? I'm glad you brought that up because when I watched that fight, I made a note. I wrote down, reminds me of C-Rod. Christian Rodriguez, the guy who can just be absolutely mauled for 8 minutes straight and then go, okay. And then they get started. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not a problem for him to go ahead and work with everything you've got and then flip the tables as soon as it's my turn. And so I do like that about him as well. So it's interesting spot. I am not chalking up. I'm picking Clayton Carpenter. No bet at this point here for me. We'll see how this one plays out. Maybe a live shot though, guys. Keep that in mind because if you see Clayton taking some big deep breaths and you see that wicked crazy smile across the cage from him, that might be a good live entry opportunity there for you. Next fight up, we've got Dan Argueta that determined himself coming in here taking on Cody Haddon. Liam, I actually really like this fight. I kind of ended up deep diving. It's funny because it's always these greasy, grimy ones that nobody wants to talk about that catch my imagination. Dan Argueta is a guy who I've bet on several times with very disappointing results. He's been in the UFC for a bit now, but it's been a weird run. Dan is 1, 2, and 2 in the UFC. That's right. 2 of his fights have been overturned for no contests. He's got no contest versus Miles Johns and Ronnie Lawrence. Unless I'm mistaken, both of these guys popped for performance-enhancing drugs. Now, I know Miles Johns took to Twitter and had a big old thing to say about it afterwards, but just look at the veins in the guy's abs. His veins have veins. Like, I'm not saying anything.
Was the false tap, if you remember. Ronnie's was the false tap allegation.
Oh, the false tap. Yes, okay. You're correct on that one. And then the losses to Damon Jackson and Matsumoto, which was just a really weird result. Dan Argueta pushes a hell of a pace. This guy is like wrestle. I mean, he chain grapples. He puts you against the fence. He looks to re-wrestle, take you down, reshoot in. It's not always the most fantastic technique. He does kind of bull in a China shop his way to like double legs and trying to get in under the hips. And that's where I felt like Matsumoto actually had a really good defense for this particular type of wrestling offense. And similar to what we were talking about in the last fight, just kind of outlasted him. I feel like Dan Argueta can go hard with that pace for a full 15 minutes. We have seen that before, but we've also seen him get into a little bit of trouble the deeper the fight goes, where like I expected him to be able to put a pace on Miles Johns. And in actuality, it turned out Miles Johns was the guy that was able to kind of put the pace on him towards the end of that fight. He slipped up and he made a mistake. Matsumoto was able to get him out of there at the very end of the second round. We're talking 2 seconds left on the clock. He got put out by Matsumoto, who I think is a hell of a prospect, by the way. So I'm not sure that's a massive knock on him the way it really should be, but I like Dan Argueta's overall game. The wrestling, the pace, when he gets takedowns, he's aggressive with ground and pound. He's not just kind of a sit on top of you and control type of fighter. He does always work to open up submission opportunities, and he does look to attack. Now, Cody Haddon 7-1. This is his UFC debut coming off Dana White's Contender Series. He is 26 years old. He's a 3-time junior national boxing champion. He fought out of Hex, and his only pro loss was to Steve Erceg. So we're looking at a guy that might have some decent upside here, where your only pro loss is to a guy like Erceg, who we've seen what he's been able to pull off in a very short amount of time in the UFC. Seems like this kid could definitely have a future here. I like his leg kicks Very hard chopping, good forward pressure. He mixes his attacks well, where he's going body, head, legs, finishes combos with rib roasters and big knees up the middle. He's got a great jab on him. I really like his jab. He's fast. He also does a good job of mixing in the offensive grappling, Liam. But the problem is, I went back and I rewatched that Steve Erceg fight. Now, it's 3 years ago, right? So you can expect there's going to be some improvements between that fight and his, most recent set of skills. But he wasn't really able to get the grappling going against Steve Erceg. He tries to kind of rely on the body lock and tall man tips people over and does that kind of thing. But Erceg, on the other hand, was able to get him on his back multiple times. Erceg was able to grapple this guy and get him down on the ground and kind of have some success in those transitions. Haddon, I think, is the much cleaner striker here than Dan Argueta. But seeing him give up his back and get dragged around the cage via body lock, it just seems like the wrong guy's favored to me. You guys know my Dana White's Contender Series angle. I do not like laying chalk on these guys when they make their UFC debut. It's a new world. It's a big step up in competition. So yes, he does have a loss to Steve Erceg on his record, but everybody else he fought, Liam, seems like a real low level of competition. You look at the records those guys have, and it's just not a ton. So I feel like we might have a good opportunity to get on a live dog here. The dude has UFC experience, Dan Argueta, that is, has UFC experience. And I'm expecting him to know a little bit better under the bright lights what this situation looks like. I think we finally found an opponent where he can kind of shine, as long as he doesn't end up staying stuck at striking distance with this guy. I think the wrestling is going to be the biggest advantage in the cage on Saturday. And at plus money, I might have to go to war with Dan again. I feel like it's a buy low of all buy low spots, because he just looks so gross when you look at his record. But I kind of think he's got a very clear path to victory.
I definitely see the argument, right? I think that Dan Argueta can win this fight. He's in a playable price range. He's cashed in this price range before, but I'll say, man, first and foremost, the fight with Ronnie Lawrence was very, very frustrating to me. I had a plus 170. It was honestly my only bet of the week. If you remember that week, I had one bet on the whole card. It was Dan Argueta money line plus 170. He came out there, looked like he was going to choke the guy in a minute and a half. And then, of course, early stoppage and just voided out, give you your money back. So really frustrating night at the office that night. But the thing that was disappointing to me is I feel like Dan Argueta has the skill set to beat a guy like Miles Johns just in my head, right? I'm like, he's a good wrestler. He's got pace. He's got aggression. He's got tenacity. Frankly, those are all the things that you've needed in the past to beat Miles Johns. And I do think Miles Johns got a new doctor. That's a personal opinion of mine. However,
I agree with you.
I didn't like the performance. I'll just leave it there. I came away from it pretty unimpressed, honestly, by the Dan Argueta showing. Then the Gene Matsumoto fight, I felt like they were feeding him to the Lions. They were like, thanks anyways, dude. And they just put him in there for a really hard fight. So he loses to Damon Jackson. That's fine. He beats Nick Aguirre. That tells me nothing. Doesn't finish him. Also not great. So for me, he's got these skills. He's got these abilities. His best win career is not even in the UFC, in my humble opinion. It's Myron Santos pre-UFC. He beat that guy down, but it was a young kid. He just took him down over and over and beat him against the side of the fence. And I believe Myron Santos was 19 or 20 at that point. So I just think that when you look at Dan Argueta's career, he's a tough guy. He's a game guy. He wants to go out there and scrap. But if he can't get the wrestling going, and or if he gets tired in the wrestling here, I think it's going to be a long night. I think Cody Haddon has better skills in terms of just his stand-up game, his marketability. I think long-term the promotion would like to get behind a guy like this. I do think he's one of the best guys out of his regional. When you come out of the Australian scene, it's hard to find good fighters a lot of the time. I think the Steve Erceg fight kind of showed that they were trying to get him somebody talented, and they went a little too far, right? They went up the ladder. This is a guy who fought for a UFC title, though. Let's be very clear about that. So I think that when you look at Dan Argueta, he's a step below somebody like an Erceg, right, in terms of what he can do in every phase, right? Steve Erceg got knocked out by a top 5 guy, but other than that, he went out there and went 25 minutes, was one decision away from winning the title. So I think that he's a really sound fighter. I think he's good in all positions. He's a BJJ black belt. I think that Dan is good, but I do think his style kind of wears him down over time. I think he comes out with a lot of piss and vinegar and energy, but if you can continue to resist, I think you're going to make it really hard for him. And I think we saw last time Haddon was confident, aggressive, dangerous with the hands. And also, he's done a pretty good job in terms of mixing up his skills. I said against Billy Brand is really tough. He's got a very good heart for fighting. It's just the skills were a little bit lagging behind. So then this guy to go out there and hurt him and then not waste time looking for the finish. throws a couple punches and then said, I'm taking this back and I'm closing the show. We're not doing this right where I leave it to the referee. And like you said before, finishers, guys that want to go out there and close the show. I think Cody Haddon's one of them. So whether he does or not, we said UFC debut, you're not going to catch me with the -185, but I have a feeling that Dan Argueta, he needs this win to like keep his UFC career going. It's win or go home. And for Cody Haddon, I think this is the start of a bright UFC future, whether he wins or loses here. So that for me is the difference. I think like the last fight, right guy's favored. I think the line's a little bit wide, but I do think Cody Haddon should be the favorite here.
Okay. All right. Fair enough, man. Fair enough. And yeah, I think it's funny. I'm gonna address what you said as well as a comment in the chat at the same time. Cade Garrison says, if you guys hated the Bautista game plan, just wait until you see Argueta's. And we were just talking about, Liam, not betting on fights that go the distance, right? And that's where I wanted to make sure to mention the aggressive nature of Dan Argueta. The problem with a lot of these fights, and especially with the judging, is unless your name's Mario Bautista, if you're hanging on for dear life, you don't get much as far as the score goes. You have to control so much of the round that it overcomes the offense of your opponent for that really to matter. And that's why I like the way Dan Argueta tends to fight, where when he does get to dominant positions, he immediately looks to land shots. He immediately looks to attack chokes. Those are the kinds of guys that I believe will score in those control positions, and then we'll be able to squeeze a decision victory if, in fact, that is necessary. But there's the finishing upside as well. So that's where the strategy does kind of come into play. It's difficult because you don't know who the judges are going to be. You don't know what they value. And then on the night, especially if somebody has made some kind of improvements like we've been talking about, it's taken a bit of a leap of faith, because if this kid suddenly comes out and he's worked on his grappling defense a lot this time that he's been off, all of a sudden this fight is on its head, and the right guy favored should have been a 300 favorite instead, because if you can't get takedowns, you're screwed on the feet against this kid. So there's a lot of unknowns, and that just to kind of address both those points at the same time. That's why I feel like Argueta kind of is a guy I like to bet on with that grappling pace, because he does end up scoring in those positions. At least he should get counted for scoring in those positions. But yeah, we'll go ahead and wait and see on that one. Both these first couple of fights are pretty tough. They're pretty tough. All right. Next up, we have got Chris Barnett taking on Junior Tafa, and I could not be happier. It is Chris Barnett Fight Week, Liam. I love this guy. I absolutely am a massive fan of Chris Barnett. Beast Boy is the man. He is the most unlikely athlete you'll ever see in your life. I've never seen a morbidly obese man do a front flip. It's I don't know where he pulls the power from. It's insane. He can get his foot up over his head and head kick heavyweights. Like, it's stupid what this guy is capable of doing. He is so fun. And I wish they had gotten him to the UFC a whole hell of a lot sooner, because on the regional scene, he's just got this athleticism that people can't keep up with. He's TKOing people all over the place, but he's too small for heavyweight. He definitely is a guy that probably should be fighting at 155 pounds, but instead he weighs 360 and comes in at the limit, and he's fighting people way, way larger than him. The UFC knows what they've got. They're kind of giving him freak show bookings, which I personally enjoy. 2-2 in the UFC. TKO wins over Jean Vellante and Jake Collier. He did lose to Martin Boudet and Ben Rothwell, and that's where I feel like the legitimate actual heavyweights, they're gonna maul this man. I mean, even the Jake Collier fight, Liam, I had a bet that night, and I was screaming for them to stop the fight. I thought this man had had a stroke in the cage. Like his face went like completely limp on one side. And I thought he was really going to like pass out and have a heart attack in the center of the cage in the UFC. And that was going to, cancel the show. We can't do a podcast anymore. They're shutting the UFC down. Somebody died in the octagon. And it's going to be because the ref let this guy take a life-changing beating. And then he hit the most ridiculous shot that put Jake Collier down, pounds him out, does a front flip, chugs a beer. And I'm like, all right, bro is built different, right? His opponent here in this spot, Junior Tafa, the juggernaut, 5-3. Obviously, all the upside in the world here, being the younger fighter in this spot. The UFC, I think, is really trying to get Junior Tafa on track here. And Liam, like I said, it doesn't work for me when I take that angle thought process-wise, but I can't help it in this fight, because you have got Barnett coming off a long-ass layoff, damn near 40 years old, way too small for the weight class. Junior Tafa, a guy who can't grapple to save his soul. He's 1-3 under the promotion, his only win coming against Parker Porter. And it just basically comes down to, can can you take Junior Tafa down? The Tafa bros can't wrestle. They never have. I thought maybe Justin would like whisper to Junior, bro, maybe you should go to wrestling class now that you're in the UFC. He hasn't. It doesn't matter. They're just going to get in there and bang. So if you're going to get in there and bang, I'm going to pick the tall, long, lanky kickboxer. Now, many people have burned their money trying to bet against our guy, Beast Boy, before, and my heart can't take it, Liam. I am going to be a fan on this one. I want Beast Boy to win. I want to see another spinning heel kick. I want to see another front flip celebration in the cage. So I'm all team Beast Boy here in this spot. I think I have to pick Junior Tafa to go ahead and win the kickboxing match, but you're not going to catch me laying any money on him, especially at this price tag, Liam. I know it's set up for this guy to get a win. He's got a lot of advantages with the size, the reach, the kickboxing, etc. But I'm gonna throw up in my mouth just a little bit, even describing Junior Tafa as a minus 360 favorite right now. What do you make of this fight? What are you doing here, man?
I mean, this is a simple one for me. I'll never bet on Tafa at minus, anything. He sucks. No disrespect. Like, he's just not good at fighting, right? And he has a decent ability to strike, but the most important skill in fighting, in my opinion, is wrestling. Not because you need to wrestle to win fights, but if you can't wrestle at all, then you get beat in fights that you should win, right? Like, if you can't control the range at which it takes place, it's going to be really dicey. And I think that when I'm looking at this kind of fight, I just say to myself, okay, you got a guy in Chris Barnett who's got a bunch of professional experience. He's been around a long time. He's had a bunch of fights. He actually can grapple. Probably better than Tafa. So, like, who's got the takedown upside? Barnett. Who's got the grappling upside? I would say Barnett. Who's got the striking upside? Okay, Tafa. But it's like, now we're talking about a shitty heavyweight fight where, in any case, I think that Tafa should be favored, but like, that's it. He should be favored like minus 150. Like, he's just not a guy that has skills to cover these huge prices. He's not good with, like, his cardio is not exceptional. His skills are not exceptional. I think he's terrible. So yeah, I would never lay a minus 360 price tag with him, and I wish him the best. I think him and his brother both stink. I've said as much for a long time. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to those guys. Like, would they knock me out? Yeah. But like, when you just talk about if we were in a straight up wrestling match or like a jiu-jitsu match,
you could jump the ghillie.
I actually think I would do fine. So,
you could jump the ghillie.
No disrespect. I think I would do okay. So that's just the way I see it, man.
I love it. And you're not wrong. There's a common misconception that big people think they'll win, even if it goes to the ground. The fact is that is not true. I'm living proof. I know exactly what it feels like to get your ass kicked by a 115-pound person. May or may not have been a woman, by the way. So, hey, anybody who wants to be tough, man, all you guys in the chat that have never actually stepped foot in a gym before, I just ask you, go down to your local jiu-jitsu gym, take the free trial. They'll usually let you come in for a week and try it out. See how you do. See how many of the women in there tap you on your first couple of days at jiu-jitsu class. Just check it out. That's all I'm saying.
I have always done better against heavyweights than I have against 125-pounders. I've wrestled in big college rooms as well. I'll just leave it at that.
That's hysterical. No, and it's true though. Too. The little guys always cause me the most problem. You know why, Liam? Because you guys never stop. You never will sit still for 2 seconds to let me think and to catch a breath. So you end up on my back and my neck, and it's really frustrating. All right, guys. Hey, real quick, I have a hot take. I'm going to share it with you before the game starts here. This is not gambling advice, guys. There's a football game on tonight, Saints versus Chiefs, and I did something really stupid, Liam. I am betting Foster Moreau to score a touchdown at plus 750, the first touchdown at 32-1, and 2+ TDs at plus 12,000. So we're all team tight end Foster Moreau on the Saints here tonight for just a taste. And I got to shout it out because if it happens, I may or may not rip the shirt off on camera in the middle of the podcast. So let's move on to the next fight here. Niko Price takes on Themba. The answer, Gorimbo. And Liam, my friend, why don't you kick this one off for us? I'll let you lead off on the breakdown if you don't mind.
Absolutely, man. It would be my pleasure. I love Themba Gorimbo. I think people have hated on him for a long time because he was picked as The Rock's favorite fighter, right? And so what a lot of people like to do is they like to be hipsters, and I get it. If you guys look at my betting record, I like to be a hipster too, in the sense that I like to go against the market. I like to be contrarian, but sometimes you have to pick your spots, right? And everybody was telling me why Pete Rodriguez was about to deliver Themba Gorimbo. And I went out there and I obviously bet Themba Gorimbo inside the distance. I bet him by knockout at plus 540. And it's one of the quickest cashes of my betting career. He went out there and sent that guy flying. So I think when you look at it, it was two different weight classes and nobody would give any credit to Themba pre-fight. And then after he knocked him out, they're like, what a meme. I'm just like, okay, good call. So by the way, if he had wanted to submit him, would he have not have submitted him? I mean, he just dropped the guy, and the guy's like face down, basically like coming up, showing his neck. Themba was just like, I'll take the free knockout if it's here, but like he could have done, I think, whatever he wanted there. If you go back, I messaged with my guy Themba before the Takashi Sato fight. I said, Themba, what's the story here? We're going to knock this guy out, right? He said, I'm going to knock him out. He dropped him so bad, followed him to the ground, went for the choke, and he couldn't get it. So he ended up riding out a ton of back control. But you look at this guy overall. Is he the cleanest fighter you've ever seen? No. But is he more athletic than Niko Price? Yes. Is he a better fighter right now in terms of his abilities than Niko Price? In my opinion, yes, he is. And would the UFC prefer Niko Price to win in this spot or Themba Gorimbo? I think that's an easy and simple answer as well. The Rock's never heard of Niko Price, right? So that's just the way I see it, right? And I think that they put this fight together because Niko is coming off a win. It's credible, right? He went out there, he earned a win, and I think I called him a live underdog before that fight. I don't think he's a live underdog in this one. I think he's getting knocked out in the first round. So that's the way I see this one. And I think he could get submitted as well. I think he could be in round two. I don't think round one is a requirement, but I just think Themba is going to be too much, too athletic, too fast, too motivated, wants it more, hits harder, probably better durability.
Okay. Hey, I love it, man. And I see it kind of the same way that you do. And I love the callback to The Rock, because I mean, that's such a big thing. The UFC loves rubbing elbows with the right people, and having somebody like The Rock.
They signed a shoe deal with him, if people forget.
Yeah, exactly. So no, this is The Rock's boy, and you got to remember that. I think the other thing we need to just kind of address here, Liam, not so much on the Themba Gorimbo upside, is the Niko Price downside. My boy Niko is shot to bits, Liam. I love Niko, and he turned back the clock a little bit in his last fight, and God love him. My father-in-law and his best friend, who are just the biggest mushes of all time, whenever they tail me a bet, it does not ever do well. We went to watch the fights at the local DraftKings Sportsbook one of these nights, and the last fight night, actually, and I told them all about this fight, and I told them all about Niko Price, and I didn't have anything on it that night. I didn't have anything on it because I wanted to stay away from it. It's kind of an even fight when he was taking on Alex Morono. And when there was no action, my father-in-law's best friend, Mark, shout out Mark, love you, buddy. He gets up and he goes, yeah, I'm going to bet the underdog to win by decision. And like, he just walks over and just blindly pulls the trigger and wins a decision bet on that spot against Alex Morono. And I just kind of like open jaw stared at him. We're like, zero information, just on a whim, hairs on the back of his neck. He went over and he cashed a huge ticket. Niko Price by decision when the world was on Alex Morono. Pretty hysterical there to me. But it just kind of showed me like, yeah, Niko Price has to completely change his style at this point. He can't be fighting anybody with any finishing upside. We saw what happened when Robbie Lawler retired and how that ended up. Anybody with pop in his hands. I used to talk about how durable Niko Price was. I used to talk about how this guy could take a baseball bat to the face and he wouldn't go anywhere. Like, Niko's best attribute was being able to hang in there longer than you, and he could just out muscle and out power guys that had a skill advantage on him. Those days are gone. And my boy Niko's been knocked out 5 times now, and he's never been the greatest grappler in the world, Liam. So now the UFC is matching him up with a guy they want to push, a guy coming off a finishing streak, a guy who needs a realistic step up in competition. The fighters that Themba Gorimbo's gone up against recently, they're not great. Ramiz Brahimaj, Pete, like you mentioned, Takashi Sato, like these guys are not on the roster anymore. So they're giving him the next best thing. It's a notable name. It's a guy who's coming to the end of his run. It's a guy who can be finished. And so I think it's the right growth step up for Themba. And as Themba stays longer in the UFC, as he cashes bonus checks, as he makes that income, like this guy went from not having a penny in his bank account and having to borrow money from people for lunch at the end of the day. Now he's eating well. now he's actually going to get access to the training he needs. If he's got to bring in a coach or a specialist or something like that, I'll bet you he can afford it after a couple wins in the UFC. So I think the level of training is going to go up for Themba. He's a heartwarming story. I genuinely like the guy. I mean, it kind of reminds me a little bit of, Khalil coming from nothing and turning himself into something here. So yeah, it's full steam ahead for me on Themba Gorimbo in this spot. I don't see much of a path to victory for Niko unless Themba's just not the guy we think he is. Niko can always starch anybody. He's got that weird, awkward power, but he seems a little gun shy to me these days too. So I'm not sure he's even going to really go for that kind of an offense. I think Themba can kind of win this fight almost wherever he wants to in this spot. I'm glad we're agreeing on that one, man. Absolutely glad we're agreeing on that fight. And it's so funny. Okay, you guys, I love you. Okay. Trolls in the chat, you're welcome to troll all you want, as long as you're not spamming, no, racism, hate speech, none of that kind of stuff, no politics. As long as you're not doing any of that shit, I don't care. You can troll all you want. But it's funny, you guys keep up bringing up the Taira bet. I've addressed it so many times. Like, how many more times do you want me to talk about the damn Taira bet? I was very, very wrong, okay? You go back a couple of episodes, I even apologized to Aileen Perez. I started the show with a full-blown apology. So, just go back and click a couple episodes ago. Go back and watch it. Then you'll get your address that you're looking for so much. All right, next fight up, we've got JSP taking on Pat Sabatini. Grappler's delight here, Liam. I love this fight, man. So JSP is my boy. All right, fight ready, my gym. I know the MMA lab right here in Arizona. I'm a fight ready guy. I like everybody at the gym. I love Santino as a coach. Like I like a lot about what's going on over there at Fight Ready. And JSP is a guy that I've gone to war with basically every time I've had the opportunity to since he's gotten to the UFC. Now he's fallen on a little bit of hard times here, 14-6. They decided to go ahead and drop him somewhat in the deep end, and that's where he struggled a little bit here. The Joanderson Brito fight and the David Onama fight, back-to-back L's he's taken here. Man, the Brito fight still just kind of hurts my ass, Liam, because he was dominating that fight. And we just saw Brito lose in a very similar fashion, like making bad choices, ending up on his back, etc. JSP made the poor decision to talk shit to Joanderson Brito, and then he ended up in a choke. He could have, you know what? I firmly believe, I'm not kidding here, Liam. I firmly believe if JSP had just kept his mouth shut, he wins that fight. If he had just taken a workman-like approach and brought his pail with him and just kept wrestling, kept taking the guy down, kept getting on top, he would have beaten Joanderson Brito by a dominant 15-minute decision. But he opened his damn mouth. He talked shit mid-fight. He pissed off the wrong guy. And when he got his neck tightened up that way, there is no escaping a Joanderson Brito choke. He paid for it. And then the UFC put him in there against David Onama. Now, Onama is a rapidly improving freak of nature who can strike, who can grapple, who can hit like a truck, and his cardio apparently is off the charts. So someone in JSP who I thought nobody could match his cardio and his pace, David Onama found a way to take a deep breath in some, key spots there and stay in that fight and be able to defend takedowns, and just did incredible work in that fight. I can't take anything away from David Onama. But what we find ourselves in my opinion, is just a gorgeous buy low spot on JSP. Pat Sabatini, 18-5. This kid is a monster grappler, 33 years old. He's been doing a whole lot of jiu-jitsu tournaments and stuff like that lately. But frankly, the problem I see with him is he doesn't have the striking side of MMA to his game. I feel like he just really does not enjoy getting hit, Liam. Some guys, when they get hit, they just crumple. And that seems to be what Pat Sabatini does. When you get TKO'd by Damon Jackson, I feel like that's a red flag. Like, I can forgive you for losing via TKO to Diego Lopez. Not really so much with Damon Jackson. So yeah, he's submitting guys like Lucas Almeida, and TJ Laramie got the walking papers coming into UFC from Pat Sabatini. Jamal Emmers made one of the worst decisions we've ever seen in the UFC, and he got heel hooked by this guy. Okay. I do not believe Pat Sabatini is going to be able to out-grapple JSP, and that's probably mostly what this fight will be. But one of these guys is willing to throw elbows and strike during the grappling transitions, and that's JSP. And I think that's going to grind on Pat Sabatini. Whether he's on bottom, whether they're standing, if JSP gets opportunities in some kind of top position, he will always be looking to strike. And I think eventually that's going to hurt Pat Sabatini. That'll wear on the gas tank. That'll wear on the confidence. And I think this is a good spot to lay minus 130 and get JSP to get right.
I definitely see the argument, and I see where you're coming from. for me, this is a very binary fight, and I'll explain what I mean by that. I actually think that the levels in the grappling aren't that close. I think Pat Sabatini is a higher level grappler than JSP, plain and simple. I don't think he's getting choked by Brito, period. No matter what, if he had said something about his mother, I don't think he's getting choked by Brito. I just don't. But when I think that, could Pat Sabatini get chinned by the worst guy in the division? Yeah. Yeah, he could, and JSP is not that, right? He's a good fighter. He's a solid guy. I just think the problem for me with capping this fight is as follows, right? I think that Pat Sabatini, if this is a pure grappling match, is going to win, right? I think he's going to outposition him, outmaneuver him, be faster, be more technical. I think he's better at grappling, just period. But I think that when you look at like who's better at fighting, it's probably JSP, right? Just because he mixes in more strikes, he's more dynamic, gets more TKO finishes, and you just look at the fact he's a little more violent and aggressive out there. But you've got a 2-3 record career to the submission against 12-0 career to the submission. It's just way different, right? And you look at Pat Sabatini. By the way, Pat Sabatini was on the verge of being knocked out against Jamal Emmers, and Jamal Emmers was like, let me try a toe, and then he left with his whole leg, right? So Pat Sabatini was like, interesting idea. Let me go ahead and put this heel hook on and roll this way. And Jamal Emmers was left in a heap in the octagon. I'm not trying to make light of it. I'm saying like this guy's grappling is like change your fucking life. It's like put you out for a year. You got to go get knee surgery type grappling. And on top of that, he can take your neck home. It's like he's not just a leg locker. He's not just he's very, very talented. And then they give him who? Diego Lopes. What is he going to do to Diego Lopes? I bet the ends KO at plus 340. I was like,
beautiful.
This is not a good idea for Pat to take this fight. And I was like, maybe he wins it, maybe he submits it. But unless that happens, it's going to be a decision where you're sweating the whole time him getting knocked out. And for me, against JSP, again, that's still a possibility. But is he Diego Lopes? Is he that violent and scary? Like, no. Most of the time, he wants to control people. He wants to take them down. And here's the other thing that I can't get out of my head. You said before, I can't get this one out of my head. Dude, if Joe Lozon can put you through the absolute ringer in the end stages of his career, take you down, put your arm behind your back, and do whatever he wants to you, I just fear what would happen if Pat gets on top of him. Because I do think like there would be a level gap shown if Pat is on top of him in this fight. So that's the way I see it, man. I think JSP, good fighter, solid. The longer this fight goes on, he's probably going to be landing more shots, getting into his own. But I think that if Pat comes out with a really smart game plan, it might be a Pat submission one. So that for me is the dichotomy of this fight. I think Pat has less margin for error. One shot to the chin, he could just be a shell of himself. But he's probably fighting for his career. And I'll just mention, you talked about the fact he's doing grappling matches. We just talked about Niko Price. Guys, Niko Price, a welterweight. This is a featherweight contest. Suluev stretched that guy and made it look so easy. You'd be like mind blown. Pat Sabatini can grapple with anybody. It's just, can he go out there and take a punch in the first round and be able to grab a hold of this guy before he gets knocked unconscious? And honestly, I think it's an open question. So should be a close line. I think both guys have a clear path to victory, but I'd be looking at the method markets here and trying to get a little creative.
Okay. And you know what? I do not mind violence in this spot, Liam. I really don't, because we have seen my guy JSP get tapped a couple different times now, and that could be a problem here. I do think that's Pat Sabatini's path to victory more often than not. And like you mentioned, he's chinny, and the longer this fight goes, I think the more likely we see a KO from the JSP side of things. So I do think both guys are capable of finishing in this spot. I don't hate an under whatsoever. And round 2, round 3 TKO for JSP. I will be looking for those numbers when those lines drop. Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned the Joe Lozon finish back in 2019. I just feel like that was such an unrefined version of JSP. And I remember watching that fight because I was such a massive Joe Lozon fan, Liam. This is back when you could just cash tickets not knowing anything about anything, right? I bet on Joe Lozon because I was a fan and I had no idea who the hell JSP was. So I put money on Joe Lozon that night and walked away feeling like $1 million watching one of my favorite fighters go out there and thrash this young up and coming kid. I want to say he was like a 3-1 underdog or something crazy where like just completely one-sided. He was supposed to get his ass whooped. And it was the weirdest transition. It was a spot where like, I don't even think Joe did it on purpose. You know what I mean? Where sometimes you can just get tangled up grappling. I feel like it was a bit of a fluke situation where if they ran it back, I doubt Joe Lozon wins that fight. And it's hard to catch the guy in that position. Regardless, it happened. And we have seen JSP caught in those types of positions in his last couple fights as well. It seems like mistakes could be made. But regardless,
I just got to mention, Clint, a lot of people are giving Pat Sabatini grief in the chat. And listen, like I get the chin is a real concern and liability. Yeah. But let's be very clear about one thing. Pat Sabatini is 5-2 in the UFC. He's 8-2 in the CFFC, which is the best feeder league by win percentage into the UFC among active like major feeder organizations. Sean Orr used to have the data on this. He provided it to us once, and CFFC was literally the best winning percentage of any like prospects coming from any one regional show into the UFC. So Pat Sabatini 5-2, and his losses are Diego Lopes and Damon Jackson, who are both like, if not, I mean, one of them's a top 5 guy, and the other one is like a fringe top 20 guy. So it's like, yeah, he lost to those guys, and he lost by knockout. That's not great. He also got his arm broken once in the CFFC in an armbar. That's not great, but it's like, those are his TKO losses. He's not the most chinny guy you've ever seen. He got knocked out by legit power punchers as well. So just something to keep in the back of our mind. The Damon Jackson one is the flukish one, but Damon's brother died that week, and then he came out and punted him in the face in the first like 30 seconds. Weird outcome. And by the way, Pat wasn't unconscious. He was just getting ground and pounded really hard.
Yep. And Jamal Emmers is not a man who does not hit hard. I know that's a double negative there. I said that wrong. But Jamal Emmers hits like
he killed Dennis Bazooka in like 30 seconds.
Exactly. I mean, he's not the most skilled fighter in the world, obviously, but isn't he the one where he's got like 5XL gloves or something like that? He's got giant meat hooks for hands. So yeah, getting plowed in the face by that guy, not necessarily something that we want to hold against the guy's chin. It's still definitely something that you want to look at. So I'm with you. I've kind of shortchanged Pat Sabatini a little bit myself. I am planning on probably locking in JSP, but I am not ignoring the potential danger here either. All right, guys, let's move on. The next fight here, we've got CJ Vergara, and he's taking on Ramazan Temirov. Oh, my boy CJ. They are doing their best to stack up some AZ boys on this card, apparently. CJ Vergara, Liam, I will go ahead and let you guys know that at 33 years old, he's just solid everywhere. Like, he's not special anywhere, but CJ Vergara is very good everywhere, and that makes him a little bit dangerous in some of these spots. He's got good cardio. He can wrestle. He's good, solid defensive striking. He makes very good in-fight decisions. In fact, Liam, he's one of the highest fight IQ fighters I've ever seen in my life. I will always give CJ Vergara his flowers for the time he sprinted across the cage to exhaust his opponent after having him hurt. He was massively outgunned against what was his name? Daniel Lacerda. Daniel Lacerda caught him with a massive shot, and he was on wobbly legs, and this guy sprinted around the cage until Lacerda got tired and then turned the tables on him and got him out of there. It was one of the funniest performances we've ever seen. But he's definitely a stepping stone type of fighter, I feel like, for the UFC. He's not a guy they're trying to push. He's a guy that'll get in there and not say no, and he'll fight anybody and everybody. And you know what? Every once in a while, he'll be tough and gritty enough and have enough heart to pull off the win. His opponent, Temirov, 17-2, 27 years old, 10 wins by KO. This guy looks like a brutal, vicious little gas tank. He's got a big old back on him, Liam. And, you see big backs on guys. Some of them, it's for like offensive grappling and takedowns like Sean Brady. Some of them, it's like your Anderson Brito for wing and hooks. This guy is the latter. He's got a giant back on him, and he puts it to good use. He comes forward winging bombs in every exchange I've really ever seen him in. He plants and he swings. He has almost no regard for his opponent's offenses in some cases. And maybe that's this, the guys that he's been fighting on his way up to the UFC. He just wasn't intimidated, but he seems almost recklessly violent in some of his fights, which I love to see. I like this guy. He just wants to bang. And I think that he is maybe a little overpriced for being a UFC debutant. We talked about that. I try not to chalk up on these debuting fighters, but it's hard to argue against him here, even at minus 265, because we have seen CJ Vergara hurt before. So if CJ can't get his wrestling going, he's in for a tough night on the feet. I want to mention, I feel like this line is wide. I mean, Temirov is being put in a spot to succeed. He probably should win this one. But from a betting perspective, I'm not laying that kind of a price tag unless I'm extremely convicted. I am not convicted. What do you make of this fight, Liam?
Never watched this guy, but doing a quick Tapology scan of my friend Temirov, I think he's the side in this fight with the same disclosures I gave on a few of the other fights, right? He's making a UFC debut. Don't always love that, right? Just because you could see an underperformance. But frankly, I don't know that CJ Vergara has a UFC level win yet, despite being in the promotion for 6 fights. If you go back and look at maybe Clayton Rodriguez, which was a close split decision, I'm not convinced that guy is necessarily UFC level, no disrespect, but I think he's still got a lot to prove. Could hardly make the weight class, much less get in the octagon and win. So Then you've got the Daniel Lacerda fight. That guy literally never won a fight in the octagon. I think it was 0-5-1. So, or one no contest where he lost to Edgar Chairez as well.
Probably
and got tapped in that one. So
the weirdest fighter I've ever seen, Liam. Like, seems like he's got UFC caliber offense, and they kept giving him shots at it, and he just doesn't have the gas tank to keep it up for more than 3 or 4 minutes.
Are you seeing this in the chat? Clayton literally got cut today. That's so funny, man. I don't mean that and to make light of it, but I just mean because I was saying, I don't know if he's UFC level. He gets cut today. I think that when you look at this guy Vergara, Vinicius Salvador, he's not UFC level. He'll be gone.
He's not.
If he's not gone already, he'll be gone in the next 2 years.
I love that
Daniel
spot. That was so fun
gone.
for people doubting CJ Vergara when he got Vinicius Salvador.
Hell yeah, man. But even still, like, that fight was a little closer than it should have been. Like, because that guy's not good, right? And he didn't finish him either. So I just think when you look at it, the Asu Amabaya fight, making it the distance there, that was solid. But did he have any moments? Did he look like he was going to win the fight? I think he might have busted up his face at one point, but even then, Almabayev was just doing whatever he wanted, passing positions. I think Vergara's tough. I think he's probably going to go out there and try and make it a fight, but I don't trust his chin. And I don't really think that he's a long-term guy for the UFC. So for me, give me Temirov, but I will do my due diligence, guys. Come back on Bets and Banter, and if I find out he's a fraud, I'll let you know.
Absolutely. No, you're going to have fun watching this guy, Liam. It's nonstop entertainment. Like I said, he chomps down on his mouthpiece. He stomps his way forward. He wings massive hooks. He hits with big power, but he's also fighting in the Asian market, which, sometimes can be a little bit on the weak side when it comes to physicality and strength and size and stuff like that. So he's got an advantage that maybe he won't have in the UFC. So jury's out. You know what I mean? I want to see him at the high level. I think this is a good, solid spot to put him for his UFC debut. Because like I said, CJ Vergara isn't going to fold up and go home. He's a guy that's got the heart to hang in there. He will test your wrestling. He will test your decisions. He will test your striking. He'll make you work for it. I expect Temirov to probably go ahead and win the fight, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if CJ Vergara, gave him a little bit of a test here on Saturday. Make it a little bit closer than people are expecting. I also wouldn't be shocked, though, if this guy won a hook and knocked him out cold, because I don't think CJ Vergara is going to be able to jump on the treadmill to get away from this guy. If he gets hurt, it's probably over if he ends up getting clipped. The next fight up, Liam, is our favorite smoker voice, Chidi Njokuani, Bang Bang himself, takes on Jared Gooden, the Night Train. I like this fight, man. So Chidi is one of those fighters who I've never really had a good read on, Liam. I've just never really been able to pinpoint Chidi the way I would have liked to. And his last fight was especially confusing for me because I felt like he's just a massive man, huge power. He really relies on his kicks and his range and his distance, and he puts a lot on everything. And he kind of ends up wearing himself out sometimes doing that. Sketchy cardio, sketchy durability, especially if you make him grapple. And then he decided to drop a weight class. He decided to suck his body down a weight class and move down to 170 from 185. And I thought, oh, this is it. It's over. It's over for our boy Chidi, right? Like, there's no way dropping a weight class at his age with the amount of damage and he's got wear and tear on his body. That's not going to be a good thing for him. And he survived a very tough situation with Reese McKee. Almost got finished. I thought he was going to, but didn't. Wins a split decision and pretty much saved his job here. He hung on for dear life. So props to Chidi for pulling it off. Color me surprised. Now he's getting Jared Gooden. Gooden's a guy who has had a bit of a rough run in the UFC so far, Liam, but I think he's also highly underrated. It's his second run in the UFC, similar to like Hubbard, like we talked about last time. He fought really tough, tooth and nail with some decent names in the UFC, but he ended up going 1-3, so they let him go. Now they brought him back. He's 1-1 since his return. Gave Carlston Harris a real fight that night, and then finished Glover Teixeira black belt Wellington Turman via submission in his last fight. So this kid is dangerous. He can strike, he can box, he can hit decently hard. I know he's got 2 KO losses on his record, but he's actually very durable. Both those KO losses came up a weight class, one of them on extremely short notice. So he's not a guy that I would count as being particularly chinny. And unless I'm mistaken, he's a BJJ brown belt. My guy Dan from Half the Battle in the chat would be able to let us know if he's gotten promoted or not just yet. Last I checked, he was a brown belt. But I like Jared Gooden. Jared Gooden, I think, is a guy that's criminally underrated. And while he's not going to be challenging for a UFC title, I do think he deserves a roster spot. I'm tempted to kind of run this one back, Liam. I don't understand the chalk on Chidi. He has a solid start to a lot of his fights and then tends to fall apart. I think Gooden has a definitive grappling edge. I know Gooden has a cardio edge. And if these guys are going to get in there and bang, I think Gooden has a durability edge as well. So I kind of feel like Gooden is an extremely live dog in this spot. And people are just down on the guy, generally speaking. So we're getting kind of a, hey, remember Chidi? He's the guy with the big head kick knockouts. Like, but the reality is he barely squeezed by a guy that doesn't belong in the UFC via split decision. So I kind of think maybe that 170 cut takes its toll this week, and Jared Gooden pulls off the upset at plus 155. What about you?
We're going to agree on this one, my man.
Let's go.
I'm not a Chidi guy, right? You called it like the greatest gravelly voice or something. I just call it cigarette cardio, my brother. This guy comes out there. He's got normally a good 7 minutes. He's enthusiastic about it. He does have a cool voice. I'll give him that. Like, I think Chidi's fun. The things I'll say positively about him, he can head kick somebody from like 6 inches away. It's pretty remarkable. He's got very good dexterity with his legs. He's a very fun kicker. But aside from those things, I do think there's some problems with this game. I think the Mario Souza fight showed off what happens when somebody's way worse than Chidi on the ground. He can take him down, mix in his top game a little bit. That's where he feels comfortable mixing it up with people on the ground. I don't think he likes to be underneath. I don't think he's comfortable down there. I think the black belt is a little bit more of a please don't come down here than I have all the skills when I get audited down here type of black belt. That's a personal opinion of mine. Again, talented martial artist. Make no mistake. He's been doing the game for a long time. He's 35 years of age. I don't think his cardio is very good. Frankly, I think Reese McKee is no good. I bet on him in that fight. I still think he's no good. I thought that he had a path to victory, right? Which is to go out there, outlast this guy, and then finish him. I think I bet
cardio and heart, baby,
at like 18-1 or something like that. And frankly, like, I almost hesitate to say this, but because you had me on the show, Clint, I'm going to give away a thought that I had on this fight, which is Jared Gooden just submitted Wellington Turman, who's a very good jiu-jitsu player, and I didn't see that coming at all. I had the ends by KO at a pretty big plus money number, which I was like, man, I can't believe I'm getting this number. It's because they thought there was submission equity on Wellington Turman. Turns out it was a club and sub for our guy Jared Gooden. So you talked about his brown belt. We talked about cardio. So you've got cardio, potential grappling advantage, and you can club and sub him. I mean, that just seems like a guy who's got a lot of paths to victory for me. So Jared Gooden, dogger pass situation for me.
Let's freaking go, Liam. I like it. And that, my friends, is going to be your official Link Memorial Dog of the Week. We missed it just last week with Jose Aldo. They robbed us. Split decision, went the wrong way. We're running it back. Liam, I'm about -4 units on the Link Memorial Dog of the Week, picking one fighter every single card to be my Link Memorial Dog of the Week. The goal, obviously, is to do my boy proud and end in the black by the end of the year. So I've got to get my shit together, but we're only 4 units negative. So not a lot of ground to make up there. If we can hit a couple on the back half of the year, we can definitely get home. We're going to go ahead and do that with Jared Gooden in this spot. I've had him circled. I'm just watching to see where the line goes, because I am notoriously bad for predicting market moves, unless it's a favorite like my guy Umar Nurmagomedov, where I'm like, I know this is going to go away from me, get in as early as possible. I'm not sure where this one's going to go. I see a lot of love for GD in the community so far, so I'm thinking it may end up getting a little bit wider here, and I might like a little bit more plus money. If I do see this thing tick down, I will probably jump in feet first at that point, but I am happy with plus 155 if that's what I got to take. And shout out to my guy, Dan, half the battle there. He's a big fan of the night train right there. So let's freaking go. We're going to get this one. All right, guys, real quick, shout out sponsor time. First and foremost, you guys know this is the home of fight. The home of bets is the name of the YouTube channel. I am a complete degenerate and I swing from the rafters, but we do absolutely have guys that are far more consistent than I am. And right now, if you guys want to try out the premium package for Home of Fight, we have promo code Dana, as in Dana White's Contender Series, DANA will get you a free 5 days using the service. Tomorrow night, Dana White's Contender Series. I know my boy Liam has a show, so go make sure you support him and check out his content for Dana White's Contender Series. But the two guys, Hajib Picks and the Parlay, absolutely are smashing. As you can see, plus 83.7 units between the two of them in profit. So use promo code Dana, link in the description below. Get signed up, try it for free, and check out what they can do for you. Next up, we need to shout out the fight numbers. If you guys haven't seen fight numbers, please make sure you check it out. They've got the best odds board in the game. They have trends, they have articles, they have tools, and their DFS calculator stuff. It's not loading for me right now, but there it goes. The DFS stuff has absolutely got me to break even when it comes to my DFS adventures on Saturdays. I'm not good at DFS, and they have somehow turned me from donating every single week into being able to go ahead and break even, and every once in a while turn a little profit. So check out Fight Numbers, again, link in the description below there. If you're doing your research for Dana White's Contender Series, you guys absolutely have to have Spectation Sports. If you are not finding fights, if you are not finding organizations using Fight Pass, that's because they're here. They're on Spectation Sports. Promo code DieHard will get you a 20% discount on your subscription. They've got awesome content here. Cage Titans. We've got FAC 26 coming up. Maverick MMA. There's lots of MMA action on here. So if you just want to watch more fights, it's another reason for you to sign up. Finally, Bet Openly, guys. You guys know all about Bet Openly. We are crushing and we are saving money every time we bet anything using Bet Openly, nearing $8 billion. Gamblers saved 1% juice. The winner pays, so everybody involved gets better numbers. I will just go ahead and show you. And if you're in a state, guys, I always try to drive this home. There's people who don't know where to gamble, like California. Sports betting is not legal. We've got Dana White's Contender Series lines. This thing is legally under daily fantasy. So if you're in California and you can't access DraftKings, guess what? You got Bet Openly. So get signed up. Link in the description below. Better prices. We're saving money. I'm running free contests. I'm going to do another one for UFC Vegas 98. So get signed up, guys, because I will be giving away, literally giving away money for an MMA contest. All you got to do is either pick sides or over-unders. I haven't decided which one I want to do yet, but we're giving free shit away basically left and right. We are in the middle of running the gauntlet where we're giving away $600 in cash prizes just for using the platform. So not only is it going to save you money long-term, but there's lots of perks as far as me just throwing cash at you for signing up. So go ahead and get involved, guys. Come on, come hang out, save money, have a good time. I am joined by Liam Picks Fights to break down UFC Vegas 98, and we got the rest of the card to talk about. So let's dive straight on into it. We have got Josh Fremd taking on Abdul Razak Al Hassan. And Liam, my friend, would you like to kick this one off? Do you want to tell us a little bit about this fight?
Sure, happy to do so, my man. It's a weird fight, right? I think on paper, you look at a guy who's 39 years of age, like Abdul Razak Al Hassan, and you say to yourself, rubber's got to meet the road at some point, right? He could definitely get knocked out. 38 years of age and older. I always talk about just it's numbers, right? It's data, it's statistics. It's not my opinion. Fighters over the age of 38 just much more likely to get knocked out than fighters under the age of 38. That's like the tipping point. So you look at a guy like Abdul Razak. He's a very talented fighter. He's got skills in all different positions, but typically has been a pretty KO reliant fighter. I thought there was an argument he could have beat Joaquin Buckley. It was a very close fight. But if you look at that kind of fight, that's like as close as he comes in a decision. Oftentimes is on the wrong end of some grappling, some wrestling, guys taking him down. And Fremd is a guy that comes from that background. The things I don't like about Fremd, athletically, I think he's very average. Honestly, like his effort level, I don't think has been what I needed it to be his last two fights to want to bet on him or put faith in him moving forward. I think that the win over what's his name? Dumas was a good win, but it was like I think he was fortunate with the opponent. Yeah, I mean, run it back, fine, but I bet like plus 180 at the time. I was happy to cash it, but I was like still unimpressed by Fremd. And then the Jamie Pickett fight is
the guy was high as a kite that night.
Dude, and here's the thing though. This guy, Josh Fremd, like he has a clear path to winning the fight, right? But I just don't trust him, man. And honestly, I don't think he's going to take the shots very well from Razak. So I think you look at Fremd's quality of opposition, man, it's been like pretty solid. Like if you just look through like the guys he's lost to, Fluffy Hernandez and these guys, like they're pretty damn good. But then you look at the wins and they're not really there. And he does just seem like he's going 50-50 at best with people. So it's not a fight I feel bullish on betting, but just like gut instinct, I think Abdul Razak probably knocks him out.
Man, I'll be honest with you, Liam. You talked about not wanting to be disrespectful, but being truthful earlier. That's how I feel about this fight. Josh Fremd is terrible. He's a bad fighter. I remember people mocking me relentlessly for taking the shot on Andre Petrowski in his last fight against Josh Fremd. Everyone called me absolutely insane. It was a lock. It was easy. Andre Petrowski is done. He's shot, and he dominated that fight. Josh Fremd is not a good grappler. He can be taken down. He's got decent cardio. He's a really big guy, but he's fragile. He can get hurt. He can get hit. He's not the most technical guy in the world. He is maybe scraping the bottom of the barrel in the UFC. Personally, I don't think he's even UFC caliber. I believe the UFC is using him as much as they can to prop some people up. They're throwing him to the wolves. He's just not going to be around for very long. And in this spot, Abdulrazak Al Hassan, I know he's had a bit of a tough time. I know he's dropped a couple of situations. The split decision with Buckley doesn't look good. The fact that he's never won a decision doesn't look good. But remember, he's coming off of getting Brundaged, right? This guy came out like a bat out of hell against Cody Brundage, Liam, and he beat the piss out of him. Brundage was ready to go home. He found his way out. I called the disqualification, and I was this close to cashing another ticket because Cody tried to do it for me, but we couldn't quite get there with the officials that night, man. I think that Abdulrazak Al Hassan legitimately has a chip on his shoulder, and he lost some of the best years of his life in MMA to a legal situation. I'm not going to get into any of that, but the fact is he has felt and looked like a free man in the cage ever since that wrapped up. I think we see a remotivated Abdulrazak Al Hassan. That's how you say that, guys. That's very hard in the middle of a breakdown to roll off of your tongue. But we've seen some down performances from him while he was dealing with that. Obviously, he got taken down and choked out by Joe Pyfer. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The fact that he went to a split decision with Buckley and what Buckley's turned into, that's not a bad aging win or loss, in my opinion. A fight that he very easily could have been on the winning side of. And the motivation we saw coming out against Cody Brundage, I think he's going to come out the same way against Josh Fremd. And if these guys go blow for blow, it's Abdulrazak Al Hassan all day. And I know Josh Fremd has some decent cardio, but I don't think he's going to have decent cardio when he's ripping body shots from Abdulrazak Al Hassan. I'm with you. I think it's Abdulrazak Al Hassan, and I think it's Abdul early. I will take every opportunity I can to bet against Josh Fremd because I just don't think he's any good. And if Abdul wants to go out there and wrestle the way he did against Buckley, frankly, I think he can have success with that in this spot as well. So I'm expecting Abdul round 1 KO, and I'm more than willing to chalk up in this spot because I think he's the right side. I'm happy about it. UFC free bet picks, our guest from last week, saying I was sitting by Cody Brundage's family, girlfriend, and training partners. Oh shit. Oh, I can't imagine what those conversations sounded like after that fight. That must have been a rough seat to be in there, my guy. All right. Next fight, we've got Daniel D-Rod Rodriguez taking on Alex the Great White Morono. And they're just fucking with me at this point, Liam. They absolutely are just fucking with me because Daniel Rodriguez is another one of these fighters, and that's like the third one on this card, that I just can't cap very well. I don't understand the guy, right? Like, there have been several fights where I just could not be more wrong about him. Anytime I go big on him, he just doesn't show up. Like, I remember painfully watching my money die when he fought Nicholas Dalby. I know you've had just an incredible read on Nicholas Dalby throughout the years, but that was a nice
I was on Daniel Rodriguez there, and to be honest with you, Clint, thought he won that fight watching it live, but
okay,
that's all right. I lost the money anyway.
Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better at least, because I know you've cashed a couple tickets on Dalby. I assumed you would have probably been on his side on that.
I learned my lesson, I'll say.
Fair enough. I didn't. We've got D-Rod here on a 3-fight losing skid. And the last one, the loss to Kelvin Gastelum with the form he's been rounding out in recently, is probably the most eye-opening and scary of the three. You know, getting submitted by Neil Magny. I know you've got very strong opinions about Neil Magny's grappling skill set. That one's maybe a little bit concerning as well.
I actually had Magny ITD plus 680 that time. So there you go, man. Zig and zag, zig and zag.
Some of the stuff you pull off, man, it's madness. I love it. Alex Morono, 34 years old, Fortis MMA prospect. This guy is he's another one of these middle-of-the-road fighters that will always bring his lunch pail. This guy comes to work. He will volume you up. He will hit you. He will try to hurt you. He'll do everything he can to win the fight. He's never going to quit. You got to put him out to get him out of there. He's going to be in close fights every single time, but he just doesn't have the physical gifts. He doesn't have the tools. Some of these guys do, so he'll fight for your dollar. He'll be in close fights, but he's just not destined for the top of the pile. You know what I mean? And I love the guy for that. It's funny because you go back a couple of years after the Anthony Pettis loss, I went on a run with my boy Morono because I talked to everybody about just how damn good he is. And nobody wanted to give him his flowers. Nobody wanted to give him his credit. Well, the secret's out, right? Like when he put together a winning streak and he took out Matt Semmelsberger, then he's zigzagging now. Everybody wants to be on him. He gets KO'd by Ponzinibbio. Well, now he's back to sucking. He pulls off the upset against Tim Means. Like he He's alternating wins and losses right now, and nobody really knows what to do with him here. And this is a spot where, frankly, Liam, I think the best choice is to keep your hands in your pockets. Like, I don't have any interest in betting this fight whatsoever, because Daniel Rodriguez is not a guy who I've had very good success backing for or against. And then Alex Morono, I used to have success on him, but then when the secret was out, the prices got wrong, and he's hurt me a couple of times where I have been wrong recently on him. I think this is going to be a tough fight. I feel like Daniel Rodriguez, with the, a bit of a height and reach advantage, I would imagine, is going to be able to keep Alex Morono at bay, and he struggled with that reach at times. But I also feel like Alex Morono, frankly, might be in better form than D-Rod at this point in his career. So little up, little down, don't really know what to do. D-Rod's a favorite. I'm probably passing, and split decision. That's what I'm expecting here. What do you got here on this one, Liam? Talk to me.
This is a hard one for me to cap. I don't think that Morono is an easy guy to cap. I think sometimes he shows up looking skinny fat, and sometimes he shows up looking a little bit more trim. He's a coach as well as an athlete, so I think sometimes his priorities are a little bit out of whack. I think he says yes to everything the UFC offers him. I think he's a professional, disciplined martial artist, been around a long time. Don't think he's ever been submitted. So quite a record for Alex Morono. His knockout losses, I think, are the biggest concern here. When you look at D-Rod, he's a pretty clean puncher. Kelvin Gastelum is a guy that's got a brick for a head. Honestly, I thought D-Rod could have won that fight as well, if you're asking my sincere opinion. If you look at his record, he's 7-4 in the UFC, and I think that he beat Nicholas Dalby. I think he beat Kelvin Gastelum. That's my personal opinion. So if that was his record, he'd be 9-2 in the UFC. He'd be working on a pretty damn solid resume. And frankly, think about the other fight that he had with what's his name? Li Jingliang. That was a close split. So you get 6 of one, half dozen of another, right? He got one that maybe shouldn't have went his way, but a couple of these other ones went against him, and maybe they could have went his way. So you look at the Ian Gary fight. Everybody was telling me how he was going to beat Ian Gary, and Ian Gary sucks. And I remember saying, I was like, are we sure about that? Like, I just feel like it's a way younger guy, a little bit more athletic upside. I think he's going to come out here and look good. And he way exceeded my expectations. Then you look at the Neil Magny fight. The only thing that I just didn't understand about that was I was like, D-Rod's a solid enough guy, but like, what makes, Neil Magny impossible to finish him? I was like, he's just another man, right? He's been rocked in many fights. Dwight Grant had him on ice skates, right? So I think when you look at it, like, the problem I see for Morono is I don't know that there's a clear path to victory. Like, I don't know that he could just easily take down D-Rod. D-Rod's a pretty wide guy in terms of his base. He's got a pretty good guillotine series. I know that he's only found it against Tim Means, who's a eminently submittable guy. But when you look at, his overall body of work, he's got a 10th planet background. He's not a complete incompetent on the ground. He's normally worked back up when he needed to from the bottom position. And when you look at his striking on the feet, it's getting a little bit slower, but he's still pretty effective. He can still land pretty heavy hands. And I just don't like the way Morono reacts to getting hit hard. You know what I mean? Like, if you look at Morono's record, he's done very well throughout the course of his career, but the losses that have not aged well, Niko Price, I mean, frankly, he has no business losing to Niko Price at any stage of his career. And especially this version of Niko Price, I thought that was not good. Then you look at the Santiago Ponzinibbio fight. He's fighting great. Gets clipped once and the fight is over. And that's another guy who's an elder statesman in the division. You look back at the Anthony Pettis fight, guys. This is like late stage Anthony Pettis goes out there and was down around and looked like he was out of options and out of ideas, and then spinning head kicks this guy, and he did a freaking salsa dance around the octagon. So I think when you look at the body of work, Morono, solid enough guy, but look at the wins. Reese McKee, he's terrible. Donald Cerrone, way past his prime. David Zawada, not a UFC level fighter. Mickey Gall, not a UFC level fighter. Matthew Semmelsberger, barely clinging to that UFC level. So we'll still give him that. Tim Means, obviously solid, way past his prime. Court McGee just beat Tim Means and showed you where Tim Means was at in his career. But Court McGee was on a 3-fight losing skid. So let's not get away from Alex Morono is just an average guy. Right. He does everything. He says yes, but a lot of times he's just an average guy. So for me, I think D-Rod should be a slight favorite here. Probably not so substantial, but I think the right guy is favored.
Okay. Fair enough, man. I will take your word for it, and we'll go ahead and we'll pick D-Rod here on the show. Love Alex Morono. Wish him well. We'll see what ends up happening here. Drake says D-Rod by KO, easy money, round 3. Okay, interesting call. Interesting call. Let's go. Next fight up, we got Cory McKenna popping to herself, taking on Julia Polastri, the Psycho. Women's MMA at its finest, Liam, here. We have got Cory McKenna, who is a very, very young prospect, somebody who I think has a lot of future potentially. I know that's a weird way to say it, but it's like, I'm not quite sure. Like when she first got to the UFC, I really felt like she was a bit of a hidden gem and in the right place she could really grow, but she's had kind of mixed results. 4-2 in the UFC so far. She's just 25 years old. She did get arm barred by that, I don't not say a bad word, Emerim in her last fight. Shocker, round 1 armbar. She's training over at Team Alpha Male, which I think may have been a decent move there for her. Good footwork. She's very light on her feet. She's got a good jab. She's got no pop on her punches. There is no threatening whatsoever with power, physicality, anything like that. But she's a very good wrestler. Good, solid, strong top control. She's got great top pressure. I like positionally everything that she does with her takedowns. I think she's got a bit of an I win button in the wrestling category against a lot of mid to low tier women's MMA fighters for the most part. And I think she's going to be growing and getting better. Julia Polastri, 12-4, 2-time Dana White's Contender Series competitor. You guys know where I'm going with this. If you compete on Dana White's Contender Series, Liam, I'm not sure I've told you my potential angle. I'm still working on gathering the data. But if you have to go on Dana White's Contender Series more than once, I think it's a massive knock on you as a fighter and for your future outlook. Now, obviously, outliers like Joe Pyfer, where they're purposefully giving you a second run, whether it's for ratings or you need more time. Bo Nickel, they brought him back because he has no MMA fights. You know, a guy like that. Obviously, you have to remove those guys from the data pool, but everybody else who legitimately just either doesn't impress Dana enough in their first fight or loses, and they give them a second crack at it, they bring them back and they win the second fight. I think those fighters are not very good. And we've got a couple of examples that we can pull from. And I'm going to keep track of it as we continue going forward, but I'm noting it every single time we see it. And Julia Polastri is one of those. 1-1 on Dana White's Contender Series. She lost, she came back, she won. Now she's in the UFC. Let's see how she does. 0-1 to start. She went 3 for 3 of takedowns in her last fight, but she got outlanded 244 to 122. Little to no volume on the feet. Now, we called that fight pretty stinking well. That was Hamzat's girl that she was going up against, so I can't get too mad at her for losing to Josephine Knudsen. That is a tall task, but this is a bit of a striker versus grappler matchup. I do like the way Polastri is aggressive with her ground and pound. When she does get on top of people to dominant positions, she really unloads the clip. She looks for damage. She looks for a finish, and that's great, but she tends to be a little bit low volume on the feet, and I feel like she really only lets that aggression go when she's grappling and when she's on top of people. She will have a 5-inch reach advantage here in this spot. She gave up 4 takedowns to Jasmine Jasudavicius in her UFC debut, or not her, I'm sorry, her Dana White's Contender Series debut. Jazz went 4 of 7 that night. Now, Jazz has had a very good run in the UFC so far, so I'm not sure if we really want to knock her for that or count that against her. But I do think it means she can be taken down. If we've got someone who can give up takedowns and is willing to play off their back versus somebody who's probably going to be a little bit more active on the feet and will look to shoot those takedowns, I kind of like Cory McKenna in this spot, Liam. I feel like she's got more upside. She's obviously still growing and developing, but she's a slight dog in this spot. And I know women's MMA favorites are crushing this year, but I feel like we have a near pick'em line, small upset. Cory McKenna plus 105 for me. I'm not sure I want to get involved because, like I said, I'm trying to tighten up, so I'm not putting myself in bad and sketchy positions moving forward. But I'm kind of leaning towards the dog here ever so slightly on this one.
I'll be honest with you, man. I'm not a Cory McKenna guy.
Okay.
You know, when you just look at her game, I think she's too small, and I think she's better as a commentator. You know, I don't think she's built for fighting, right? Like you just look at her size. You mentioned she doesn't do damage, right? So she has a hard time hurting people. Very undersized. So what, are you going to be a physical, dynamic grappler when, by the way, right? What is her biggest selling point? I think if you were looking on paper, it's her wrestling and her grappling, right? You know, that's how she's won a bunch of UFC fights. Then you go look at how that wrestling and grappling turns out. Number one, they give her Elise Reed at home, blows it. Not a good look, okay? But at least, hey, you know what? Let's get back on the mend. She had some surgery. She did these kind of things. And then the whole selling point was, hey, look at this against Emerim. She comes out, she's minus 180 or something, right? And I just, the line kept growing, and people kept telling me how McKenna was a sure thing. And I was like, in what phase? Like, I thought maybe she could win on the feet, but like, by the way, she was giving up size on the feet. So it's like, is she going to out grapple and out wrestle a world champion? That's what people were telling me all week. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to take this and live with the result at plus 150. And then Emerim, it's one of the easiest cashes of the year. And honestly, one of the most mispriced lines of the year. Why do I say that? She submitted her twice in 90 seconds, guys. The fight was over. And then, you know, McKenna got put back in the armbar and armbarred again harder. It was like not good looks. So I don't think that Polastri is the same level of grappler by any means. But would I favor Polastri on the feet against Emerim? Yeah. Like based on what we know about them, Emerim's hardly been on the feet. She throws a big overhand right and tries to take somebody down. So you've got a way bigger girl who I think can do more damage if they're on the feet by far, right? If she just tries to compete on volume, I think she wins on the feet. So if she can outland her on volume, I think it's not even a close race, right? Like I think her shots will land harder. So then it's like, okay, is she going to get taken down and dominated? That's possible. But you look at Jasmine Jasudavicius. Let's be very clear. Jasmine Jasudavicius could pick up Cory McKenna by two hands and throw her out of the octagon. She's just way more physical, way stronger, not close, right? She's going out there and muscling around these 125-pound women. So I just think that when I'm looking at this, I'm saying to myself, okay, we've got now a Cory McKenna taking this fight at 115. She's undersized in almost all of her 115 fights. Polastri is out there at 125 against Jasudavicius getting thrown around a little bit. I'll give that one a pass. Julia Knudsen is like everybody's favorite prospect in the division, minus 600 every fight. So now Polastri comes out after losing and she's favored. I'm like, everybody loves Cory McKenna. I think they're going to hit her in this spot. And I think she's going to be out of the UFC by this time next year. And I don't mean to be disrespectful. That's just the way I see it. I don't think she's of the ilk. Emery went out there against Sam Hughes and put her in a lot of bad spots. And Sam Hughes did what? Stayed tough, stayed resilient, stayed durable, found a way to win the fight. And so you can say that was you and all these things. Exactly. Your girl. But that's the one difference for me is Cory McKenna looked hopeless and lost. And that was a short fight. And maybe that was it. Maybe she just needed to get back out there and say, hey, you know what? Flush it. And now I'm back in my routine. And if that's it, I'll take my hat off to her. I'll take my hat off to Coach Faber and say, I was wrong. But that's not what I've seen. So I think Julia Polastri is going to beat her ass, honestly. And I don't think it's going to be close.
Wow. All right. Bold take here from Liam. You love to see it. Glad I didn't pull the trigger there on that one because when my boy Liam has that kind of strong take, I respect it, you guys. So I'm very, very glad my hands are in my pockets on this one because I considered betting Cory McKenna. You definitely won't catch me pulling that shit after my boy Liam goes that hard in the paint. Next fight up, you've got Grant Dawson taking on Rafa García. And Liam, I'm going to let you break this one down. But real quick, the only thing I want to say on it before I pass it over to you is this really feels like a guy fighting the B- version of himself. Like when you say, Mom, I've got Grant Dawson at home, you get Rafa García. I feel like they're extremely similarly skilled and they have the same style game plan. One guy is just a little bit bigger, a little bit more physical, a little bit better, and a little bit younger. So that's where my brain is at. I want you to talk to me about this fight, man. What do you see here?
So I'll just level with you, right? I don't love this fight. I don't feel so bullish on this fight, but I'm going to just explain why this is a dog or pass situation for me. I think Grant Dawson, rightful favorite, right? But I bet Ricky Glenn at plus 400 something. I believe, like this is off the top of my head, so don't crucify me if I was slightly off. But if you look back at that fight, Ricky Glenn is clearly levels below Grant Dawson, right? And he's getting owned. And then Grant Dawson tires himself out because he's got a style and a pace that he normally can't maintain. And then he was exhausted in round 3, nearly got finished, nearly got TKO'd. And Rick Glenn is like a very average guy in the division. Then Bobby No Power Green puts him down with one punch. And you have to start asking yourself, like, where is this guy at? Does he have a bad chin? Is he not that good? And I do think those are all open questions, right? Most of the guys he's beating are in their mid-40s or they're very average. And you're just saying to yourself, okay, Grant Dawson, he trains with the right people. But is he the, A side or is he the room guy? Maybe he's the room guy for a lot of these talented guys, and maybe he's not, right? He's the American Khabib or whatever, but he's got the James Krause connection already. I'm like, I'd like to keep my hands a little distant of you guys, just as a rule. And then, by the way, he left the James Krause situation before shit got fugazi. So, hey, hats off to him, right? He could see the writing on the wall before everything hit the fan. But on the other side, here's the one selling point of Rafa García. He's a cardio guy. He just goes out there. He wants to work really hard. He wants to try his best. He's a tough son of a bitch. So is there any real selling point to his game? No, I think he's very average at everything, honestly. I think his grappling's okay. I think his wrestling's okay. I think his striking is nothing to write home about. But if he can go out there and make it an honest fight for 2 rounds, I do think in round 3, we've seen many times Grant Dawson, no matter what he does with his conditioning, he's huffing and puffing and having a hard time. And against Jerry Gordon, who's way undersized, a former featherweight, I was impressed that he was able to track him down and get that submission in round 3. I was like, hats off to him. But it just seems to me like Rafa García is going to go out there and make this an honest fight. And if he doesn't get finished early, which I don't really see Grant Dawson as the best finisher, then I think that Rafa Garcia has a chance to win it. So for me, I'd probably make this like minus 2xx Grant Dawson, just again, off my initial impression. I'll do a little more tape this week. If my mind changes, I'll let you guys know, but it's just not the kind of fight where I look and say like Grant Dawson's a shoo-in, because against Ricky Glenn, everybody told me that. And then I saw Ricky Glenn beat him within an inch of his life, and he's not good. Yeah. You know, he's way past his prime, especially in WSOF, different guy. When you added Ricky to the name Rick Glenn, it's a different person. All right.
It's facts, man. Just pure facts. Yeah. And it's interesting.
Shout out Jewish Better, dude. That's a sharp comment in the chat. Right at the very bottom, Clint. I don't know if you saw that. The most obvious draw spot of all time. Very possible. We've seen it once before with Grant Dawson, and he is a known gasser. So
that's a good call, man. That is a beautiful call out. He's literally got 2 of them on his record. So yeah, it's something that has actually happened before, not once, multiple times. Not a fluke the way this guy fights. So very good call, JB. So I think I've got a bit of a personal bias on this one, Liam, and that's why I really wanted you to go first, because I kind of have to self-reflect here a little bit, because I've lost a ton of money betting against Grant Dawson because of that cardio that we talked about, right? I've just seen him time and time and time again go out there and try to muscle his way to victories and power his way through everything. He exhausts himself. He's huffing and puffing it. But then he TKOs Leonardo Santos in the 3rd round. Well, shit. I thought he was gassing, but he got the win. Then he goes out and he does the same thing. I had him
round 3 Jared Gordon.
I did too. Actually, I did too, because Thiago Santos is a bigger gas bag. But Jared Gordon, he ain't a gas bag. This guy's a wrestler. This guy's a grinder. This guy's a guy that you got to take out of there. Same thing. I'm like, you know what? I'm not a Jared Gordon guy. I usually bet against Jared Gordon just because I think he's a meat and potatoes type and he'll get robbed on scorecards and doesn't quite do enough sometimes. So I usually bet against Jared Gordon. I bet on him in this spot because I thought, you know what? He'll be the guy that can survive cardio grappling with Grant Dawson. Another round 3 finish. Shit. The guy I think is going to gas 2 round 3 finishes. Damn. Marco Madsen. There's no way this guy can wrestle with Marco Madsen, the Olympian, the legend. Taps him out in round 3 again. So I've got this thing in my head that I'm like, holy shit. Like I keep saying this guy's got bad cardio. Not only is he not getting finished like the Ricky Glenn situation, but he's actually the one doing the finishing that I'm like, did they just like stick him in the ass with EPO? What happened? Because he keeps on completely destroying my mental projection of him. And then like you mentioned, the Bobby Green TKO where he just gets bopped and crumples. So I'm really confused on Grant Dawson. I think he will break people who are breakable. And I didn't think Jared Gooden and Marco Madsen fell in that category. So I kind of feel like maybe Rafa's a guy that can fall into that category, but I'll be very curious to see this thing play out live. I'm not laying minus 400 on Grant Dawson because we've seen him fall apart a couple of different times. Rafa's got some okay boxing on him. He's got some decent power on him. He's got okay cardio on him. So this one could get sketchy, man. It really could. I'm not laying minus 400, but I also can't quite find my way to a dog shot either.
I'm with you, man. I feel like this fight is probably just a pass for me, but it's one that I'm going to look into it a little bit deeper because some of those wins that you talked about, like they're all just against older guys. This is a 30-year-old against a 30-year-old. I think they're both highly motivated. So I think Dawson's the better fighter, but I just think the line is a little bit presumptuous.
Okay. Fair enough, man. Fair enough. You know, we don't talk about them often enough, Liam, but the spreads. If you've got a book that offers spread bets, when you get an underdog like a Rafa Garcia, where you think it's going to go the full distance, and we've talked about the judges, if you think he can take 1 round off Grant Dawson, but maybe not win the fight, you know, you might get a half decent line on the plus 3.5, maybe something to look at when those drop here for this one. JB, thank you, my friend. He says the second draw on Grant's record was a grappling match. I was just scrolling through on that one. Thank you for correcting me, JB. Want to make sure we're giving the right info out of here. I didn't see the grappling there on that one, so you're correct. He does have 2 draws, but one of them is in fact a grappling match, so we can disregard that for the purposes of MMA anyway. Next up, we got Brad Tavares taking on Yong Park. And ladies and gentlemen, this is your co-main event of the evening. I love Brad Tavares, Liam. I love Brad Tavares. He's a soldier. He's an old-fashioned guy that I feel like I've been able to do really, really well on, but I have donated more money than I can count to his round 3 prop. He's a guy, a lot like Grant Dawson, we're talking about the last fight. The cardio, the pace, he was very good at keeping people from taking him down. So he would force them to stay at range, and then he would just kind of out volume them. And he breaks people just by being unbreakable himself. And I felt like he was always going to be able to KO people and finish them when they're exhausted. And it just never happened. He got Krzysztof Jotko, but that was like the only one that he was ever actually able to pull off. So I donated piles, and he just kept on decisionating people. It's very, very disappointing there for me. But I've been a Brad Tavares backer. I've been a Brad Tavares fan. I feel like I've had a half decent read on him throughout the years. Got a good win with him against Chris Weidman recently. He really kind of showed some red flags in that fight, though, man. Chris Weidman far past his prime, coming off some brutal injuries, and he was kind of having to play it perfect at the end of that fight. When Weidman decided it was time to go, Brad Tavares had to mind his P's and Q's because he was in a little bit of trouble. And that durability seems to be scratching just a little bit here, man. KO losses against Gregory Hobocop Rodriguez and Bruno Silva. Now, the Bruno Silva one, maybe a little bit of an early stoppage, fair, but he was definitely hurt in that spot. And Gregory Rodriguez, man, hits like a truck. So I'll give you a little bit of a pass for getting KO'd by that guy. Jong Park, 17-6, kind of flying the flag for South Korea in the UFC here at this point. 33 years old. Dude has really good boxing. He's got really good cardio. He's very durable, good pace on him. And he's got a real sneaky back take and rear naked choke. He just seems to be, the Iron Turtle. His nickname is perfect, Liam. This guy comes out there and he shells up, and you can't really hurt him. And then he turtles up on top of you, and you can't do a damn thing about it. Now, I was able to snipe a very lucky situation, I feel like. I bet Andre Muniz against the Iron Turtle in his last fight. I felt like he was riding a little bit too high. Maybe he had gotten some wins against a couple of frauds, and he was going to fight a real jiu-jitsu guy. And it was back against the wall, do or die time for Andre Muniz, who's a very skilled grappler. And I thought, you know what? This is the time to sell high on Jong Park. Now, guys, mind you, I was watching that fight from the theater. I literally turned my phone's light all the way down, Liam. A buddy of mine from out of town pulls in at the last second, and I haven't seen this guy since high school. But we're both complete nerds. And he goes, bro, do you want to go see Godzilla -1? And I haven't seen this guy in years. I'm like, fuck yeah, I want to go see Godzilla -1, but the fights are on. Damn it. So of course I sneak my phone into the theater and I turn it all the way down so the light's not bothering anybody, but I'm like glancing, like I'm doing this thing. So I couldn't score that fight live. All I know is Andre Muniz was dying. He was out of gas and he was hanging on for dear life. I cashed a ticket, and everybody afterward told me how lucky I was for running away with a robbery decision on Andre Muniz, but I will take it. I was enjoying some popcorn and Godzilla, cashing tickets. So it was a very good day for me. I think I'm back on the Jong Park train here for this one, Liam. I think Brad Tavares, his time in the sun has kind of come and gone. He's a bit on the downslide. He might be 33 years old in real years, but I feel like he's 43 years old in fight years. And Jong Park's boxing is nothing to joke about. I feel like this is probably a decision fight. So, buyer be warned here on this one. It could play out very, very close. But I think Jong Park just has some more gas in the tank at this stage of his career. I'm going to go ahead and pick him to get the win. But very, very, very close fight. Could be very competitive. What about you?
Yeah, we're going to pick the same winner here. I also like Jong Park. The one word of caution I'll give, Park was not medically cleared after weigh-ins when he was supposed to fight in July against Brad Tavares. So that's just something to keep in the back of our mind. I didn't really remember that. I do remember it now that I see it. Like, I feel like he just looked bad at the weigh-in and then they pulled him from the fight. So it's just something to watch for, right? Like, you want to know if this guy is going to, show up in shape, ready to go, look good on the scale. So maybe that's a word of caution before you bet this fight. I think that when you look at Brad Tavares, he's an elite anti-grappler. I've mentioned this before. Like, you look at the fact he forces a lot of guys to the single leg. I said before the Weidman fight, I'm as big a New York homer as it gets, right? But when you look at the matchup, it was a horrible matchup for Chris Weidman. I thought they were setting him up for failure. I thought they were trying to, push him out the door to retirement. And that's kind of what it looked like, right? He went out there, he tried, but he was against a guy who could kick his leg and defend takedowns. And it's going to be a really hard night at the office for Chris at this stage of his career. His best skill set has always been he's a very heavy top player, guys. When he gets on top of somebody, it's curtains for them, right? Kelvin Gastelum, ask him how that fight went. He was rocking Chris. He was doing well. Chris got on top of him, and the fight was over because he's too heavy and he's too good on top. Former ADCC competitor, this guy. So I think when you look at Jin Young Park, unless he hurts him, he's not going to have a lot of grappling success. I just don't see that happening. I think he could potentially take him down once, maybe late, tired, something like that. He's just not going to have a lot of success pursuing the single leg against a guy like Tavares, who is excellent at just pushing you down the lever. And while you're trying to wrestle, he will punch you in the face. So if you do not, if you're occupying both hands on a single leg, Chael Sonnen talks about the same concept, but it's true. If you occupy both hands with a single leg, it leaves you open to be hit. So guys like Brad Tavares that have been fighters their whole life, they don't just go like, let me fight hands and let me fight wrists. They're like, oh, you want to occupy both hands? Hold these, right? And they start throwing back from one foot. And that is what Brad Tavares does really well. His balance is exceptional. So if, Jin Young Park goes out there and tries to wrestle himself into a hole, he's going to gas out. If he instead goes out there and just says, I'm going to work behind a jab, number one, he might just knock this guy out in the first round. I think Brad Tavares' chin has been deteriorating rapidly. And number two, I think that he could pace him potentially, right? We saw Gregory RoboCop Rodriguez kind of just kept going to the well against Brad Tavares, kept crashing, kept going, and Brad just eventually ran out of steam. And I think that when you look at the RoboCop Jin Young Park fight, that was a 50-50 fight if there ever was one, guys. I bet on RoboCop in that fight at -110, and I can just tell you, I didn't get the best of it. It was a 50-50 fight. They both swung it out in the pocket. Jin Young Park had him badly rocked. He hit him with a counter shot, and Jin Young Park just couldn't recover. So hats off to Gregory, but Gregory is on a run in the division. You look at his success, it's been evident, right? And Jin Young Park had him on ice skates, and he's a big, heavy-handed guy who could also swing. So for me, the younger guy, the guy with a little bit more variety to his game, I'm picking Jin Young Park to get the win, but waiting for weigh-ins on this one, Clint.
I like it, man. I like it. That's a very good point. I forgot about him not being cleared on his last fight. So thank you very much for bringing that up. And yeah, man, the Gregory Rodriguez fight, that's one of those ones where I feel like his stock rose in a loss. And that's always weird to do the mental gymnastics to get yourself to that spot. But Gregory Rodriguez has done so many amazing things in this division on the run he's on right now. And he was dead to rights. Man, Jin Young Park had him up against the cage fighting for his life in that spot. And then, yeah, he got nuked and he got dropped with a big shot. But if you're outstriking a guy like that and putting him in danger that way, I do think there's maybe some something to the striking of Jin Young Park. And with a guy who's got some fading durability in Brad Tavares, maybe that TKO thought isn't so crazy in this type of a spot, especially if it's a volume-based one as we get deeper in the fight, round 2, round 3. And he keeps on kind of pushing the pace, because that's what I like most about the Iron Turtle is his willingness to just kind of never stop. This guy stays on you, and he's willing to fight the entire fight. Great stat here from my guy Dan with Half the Battle. Gregory has KO'd 4 of the people on this card. They need to honor him the night of the fights. Like put a framed picture of him up in the Apex, because Gregory owns everybody on this card. Real quick, we got the MMA Jesus in the chat saying, Clint, be honest, brother, are you getting paid by the bookies or secretly getting openers? MMA Jesus, my friend, here's the best part. My sponsor is Bet Openly. So what happens when you gamble on Bet Openly is another actual human being accepts your action on the other side. So people can't even accuse me of getting paid by the bookies. I just fucking suck, because whenever I make a bad bet, it's an actual person with a wife, with children, who's trying to support their child through college. That person is taking my action. I'm just donating to other degenerates. I'm not even getting anybody to sign up for bookmakers like your DraftKings, like your FanDuel. So no, I am not being paid by the bookies. I certainly wish I was, because it would make this whole situation a hell of a lot easier. The reality, my friend, is in 2024, I just suck. And with that, we'll get into your main event breakdown. We've got Brandon Raw Dog Royval. He is taking on UFC newcomer, relative newcomer, Tatsuro Taira. Liam, my friend, when we chatted in the DMs, I reached out to you and I went, you know what? I haven't gotten a guest on this card yet. And for very specific purposes, I need the best Tatsuro Taira handicapper on planet Earth. I need a man who knows this kid inside and out to tell us the skinny what's going on in this main event spot here. Now, I know my Raw Dog. I'm a big fan of Brandon Royval, and I have made money hand over fist with Brandon Royval, but I don't know a soul on planet Earth who holds a candle to you cashing tickets on Tatsuro Taira. So, my friend, please lead us off with this breakdown. Let us know what's going on here in this main event.
I appreciate you, my brother, and thank you very much for the kind words, the support there. I've done quite well on Taira fights, right? Like if you look back, what I want to always stress to people is because I've done well doesn't mean I can't be wrong in the future, right? Past performance is not indicative of future results, and you should always understand that in betting, right? Now, with that being said, I believe that I've done well on Taira because I had a dossier on this kid before he got to the UFC. Okay, so when you look at his average odds, he's been minus 404 average odds across all of his UFC fights, right? But the times I bet him, he was minus 220, he was minus 225, and he was minus 170. Okay. So I bet him 3 times on the money line, his first fight, his second fight, and his most recent fight. Right. And why? Because in the middle there, he went up to minus 1,000, he went up to minus 800, and these kind of numbers where you got to get off the money line, right? It's still MMA. It's still volatile enough. If you don't believe me, go back and watch the Edgar Chairez fight. I was the one who's been on Taira the whole time. And I was like, yo, Edgar Chairez isn't a punk, right? He's not going to just go out there and give it to you easy. So I was like, Taira's probably going to have, a difficult round or two, but he's eventually going to submit him. And honestly, he had a couple good spots, but Edgar Chairez proved tough. He proved willing. And Taira took that fight on like a week's turnaround from another guy missing weight, Clayton Rodriguez, I believe it was. As a matter of fact, thanks for the memories, buddy. But the reason why he got let go, he couldn't make the weight. He kept showing up and missing and fucking things up. And by the way, I said at the time, when he missed the weight, he then got bumped up to 135 to fight a Basharat brother. What was that telling you? Punishment. You fucked up. We needed this guy, Taira, to get a big win. You were supposed to be that win, and you fucking dodged it. So now you're getting somebody harder up a weight class, and that's that. And so I think that the UFC has some business interests that are clear, and then some that are a little bit harder to suss out. You know that Brandon Royval is number one, a bankable guy for them. They know he's going to be willing to go out there, be tough, put on a fun fight, go out there and scrap, do some crazy shit. So good guy to put on your cards, right? Especially in a top type of billing. He's either going out there and having a 5-round war where he's trying his best for 5 hard rounds, or he's going out there and looking for finishes, looking to get crazy, or taking a risk that gets him finished, right? We saw that against Pantoja. We saw against Kaikar of France. People remember the outcome, right? They remember the win. They forget that he was plus 195. They forget that he got dropped and then got back up from one knee, threw a spinning elbow and killed the guy. Like, it was awesome. It was a cool fight, but it was extremely volatile. And what you see is this guy, Brandon Royval, number one, he has no defense. There is no defense to speak of in his game. He's got his hands down. He's all about his offense, and that's on the feet and on the ground. We've seen Pantoja take him down, take his back. Thanks for playing, right? We've seen other guys, Brandon Moreno, pick him up, throw him down, lands on his shoulder, tried to roll out of it, said, no, I can't keep going. So again, I'm not holding that against you, but look at Kevin Holland, right? And last week, I just want to point this out because, by the way, I'm plus 20 some odd units on Kevin Holland, right? If you look, it's like Tatsuro, Taira, Neil Magny, Kevin Holland, they're all like the top 5 for me, right? Like my best capped fighters ever. So you look back, and why did I like Roman Dolidze against Kevin Holland? In part because Roman Dolidze has never been finished. I saw this guy get punted in the head from behind against Nasruddin Imavov. He didn't even see the strike, and he was able to keep going 5 rounds against a top guy who's finished other guys, who's put other guys in danger. So I'm like, man, this guy Roman Dolidze is tough as shit. You kick this guy in the head, he's going to keep going. What about Kevin Holland? He hurt his hand against Wonderboy. What did he do? Thanks anyways. I'll see you guys later. And that's not who I'm paying for at Chalk. I'm not paying for guys that are like 50-50. Do I want to win? Do I not? And again, I'm not holding it against him. As a man, I respect the hell out of Kevin Holland. As a martial artist, I respect the hell out of him. When I'm talking about betting my hard-earned dollars, it's not on the guy who's talking and laughing and having fun. It's not on the guy who's out there, playing to the crowd and talking to them. And, oh, I'm getting wrestled by Derek Brunson, but I'm having a laugh with Khabib. Those guys, I'm not laying chalk on you ever like that. Okay. I thought he beat Jack Della Maddalena, but am I going to go out there and yell and scream about it? No, because the truth is he didn't even go out there and try to like push the issue, right? He just was like willing to let it be a 50-50 fight and live with the result. At Chalk? No. Meanwhile, okay, Tatsuro Taira, can you see him knocking somebody out? Yeah. Guys, I tried to tell people before the Carlos Hernandez fight, everybody in my comments saying, this guy can't strike. Why do you keep saying he can strike? Because, Clint, I mentioned off the top, I had a dossier on this guy. I knew that he was dropping people and then finishing them on the ground. So people talk about the jiu-jitsu. It's high level. It's extremely brilliant. But he also can hurt people on the hands. He can drop you with that left hand that's sharp, it's fast, and people don't see it coming. So he's got a dangerous southpaw attack. He can use the kicks. He can use the hands. He can low kick people off their feet. Okay, he's a heavy striking guy for 24 years of age. His hands are huge. So he's getting better every fight. He's getting growing into his body, becoming more athletic. He's already flexible as fuck. He's already dynamic. He's already fast. He's powerful. What am I missing about this guy that people don't want to believe this is a fucking future title challenger? That's what I see. That's what I've seen since he was pre-UFC. So for me, I'm seeing a guy who's getting better every time. I'm seeing a guy who's not afraid of these moments or challenges or opportunities, right? He goes out there in his last fight. He's able to get on the back of a good opponent, right? And Alex Perez. And do you know what happened, Clint? He got no credit. Weirdest fight I've ever seen, where you take the back of a top 10 guy and you put him in a horrible situation. By the way, Mateus Nicolau is a BJJ black belt. He got knocked out. He had nothing to offer Alex Perez, and people forget that. So then that is the follow-up, right? Alex Perez said, yes, sir. Give me another one. I am ready right now. He had been out for a while. He got back in the flow of things. He fought Makayev to a nip-tuck fight that everybody said he won. And then what happened? He got embarrassed by Taira, and I don't mean that to be rude. I mean that in the sense of what actually happened. He thought, if it's wrestling and grappling, I'm going to win it, because he did that against a bunch of other guys. And Taira got on his back. It was a dominant position. He's riding him across with a wrist ride, right? So he's got him in a terribly uncomfortable position, and then he commits to an attack, Clint. He puts his foot behind his leg, and he falls backwards with it, and it destroyed his opponent's knee. And that's a mean thing, right? It's not a very nice thing. It's fighting. We're not trying to be nice guys. I'm sorry, guys. What did what's his name do on the Contender Series last week? He literally was holding a rear waist cinch and said, I'm going to jump in the air, Jacoby Smith, and put my knee through this guy's leg.
Oh, that was so nasty.
And it was gross. But you know something else? Everybody gave him credit because they were like, dude, that was gross. But this is a fight. And he did fighting shit effectively and made this guy compromised. And Tatsuro Taira got none of the same credit. It was all a fluke. It was all a joke. And literally this guy's showing you videos of him practicing this maneuver. By the way, this is a real move. You can go find other footage. So does it hurt people every time? No. But does it flat back people or force them to ground themselves or risk injury? Yeah. And so he risked injury. And I'm sorry, guys. It turned out really badly for him. And I hope that he's okay. And I hope the surgeries go well and everything like that. But this guy is lethal with the triangle armbar. He's lethal with the rear naked choke. He can drop you with the hands. He's dangerous from all positions. We've seen him in guillotines. He doesn't give up at the first sign of adversity. We've seen him get dropped. He rallies back to win the decision. I think he's the real deal. I think he's going to win this fight, and I think he's going to finish.
I like it, Liam. I like it, my guy. And part of the reason why I put this together, you guys, is because I intentionally planned this, right? You've got Liam, who is the Tatsuro Taira expert, and I feel like I'm a self-proclaimed Brandon Royval expert over here on this one. Now, obviously, I don't have the accolades that Liam does here in this kind of a case, but I've been backing Raw Dog, and I've said before on this very podcast, if you can get Brandon Royval at plus money, it's always a good bet, because this guy comes into the cage and he does stuff that other people simply cannot. This guy creates chaos and then thrives within that chaos. The Matt Schnell guillotine choke. I played Raw Dog inside the distance in that spot because I knew he was capable of finishing via knockout and by submission against a fighter like Matt Schnell. And he did exactly that. Now, was it pretty? Was it perfect? No, but he found the opportunity and he made it work for him. People simply do not know what to do with this guy once he gets going. He's a death tornado of knees and elbows on the feet, and he refuses to fuck off. But Liam, the one thing about Brandon Royval, the reason I truly believe that this guy will never have UFC gold wrapped around his waist, he's fragile. There are some people, and that, Conor McGregor said that anybody can work hard and can get where they're going and can get where they want to be just through sheer determination and hard work. And I'm sorry, guys, cover your kids' ears. That's a lie. Some people are built for this shit. You look at a guy like Benoit Saint-Denis. Not everybody can take the beatings that he does and then bite down on the mouthpiece, get up and say, let's go again. Like, some people are just physically not capable of that. Brandon Royval is tall. He is lanky. He is spindly. He is flexible. He can scramble. He hits pretty hard for a guy with his frame. But at the end of the day, we've seen, you go back to the first Brandon Moreno fight. What happened? It was a TJ Dillashaw situation. His shoulder pops out. And what did he say after that? This happens all the time. You just got to pop it back in. His body just falls apart. He is not built long-term for this. And when he gets cracked, he gets hurt. He's got incredible recoverability, you guys. Brandon Royval can get hurt and he can work his way back from it, and it's awesome. In the Brandon Moreno rematch, I couldn't pull the trigger. Liam, I bet the over in that fight. went the distance, went to decision. I felt like a real smart guy, didn't pick a side. Those are my boys. Two of my most profitable all-time fighters, Brandon Moreno and Brandon Royval. So when they go toe-to-toe, I knew exactly what I needed to do, right? Not pick a side, go over, cash a check. So we're all good to go there on that one. And his performance against Pantoja was just incredible. And I really honestly feel like if we're doing pride rules, you shut the cage until somebody dies, Brandon Royval beats Alexandre Pantoja, right? The longer that fight goes, this kid's never giving up. He's never stopping. He's got a motor on him. But I think he's met his match here in Tatsuro Taira, because Taira can wrestle him the way Brandon Moreno wrestled him. But I also think Taira is capable of out-scrambling him in the situations where, a la Match Nell, he was able to get a step ahead of Match Nell. He was able to find the weak point and get in there and grab a neck and grab a limb and take it home with him. I do not believe he's going to be capable of pulling that off against a kid like Taira. Taira is too strong. Taira is one step ahead of everybody in the grappling well, and his control, I think, is going to be the key, because Royval causes that chaos on the mat. And if you can get a guy pinned in a position, you don't let him squirm, you don't let him scramble, or better yet, you know where he's going, you beat him to the position. That's when you beat those guys. And I think that he's fully capable of doing that to Brandon Royval in this spot. And then you look at the knockouts. You know, like I mentioned, spinning elbow, oh, sure, okay, maybe he cracks Tatsuro Taira with that, but this kid's been chin checked before. We've seen it checked out, and he's fine. Tatsuro Taira can take a shot from Brandon Royval, and I think if the reverse happens, it may not be quite so true, because I've seen Brandon Royval get clocked by people, and his eyes roll back just a little bit. And I think Tatsuro Taira's striking is improving, and he's got the kind of power he needs to pull that off. Worst case scenario, if Taira needs to get on this guy's back and not let him move and win a decision that way, I think he can secure 2 out of 3 rounds that way. So I believe that every single path to victory is on the table for Tatsuro Taira. And that's as maybe the biggest fan of Brandon Royval in the room. I see a lot of love for Raw Dog. He's been a guy that, normally speaking, would be my dog of the week, because I love going to war with him, and he's capable of getting in that cage. And on his best night, he can beat absolutely anybody. It's changing in the guard time, Liam. I'm with you. Tatsuro Taira is the future, and I think he's going to win this fight on Saturday.
Tatsuro Taira! I'm happy, thank you!
I love it. There you go, everybody. That was UFC Vegas 98. Full card betting breakdown. I hope you guys enjoyed the content, the information. Please gamble responsibly. Go out there and make good bets. Use the information to put your money in a secure position where you think you can get some wins. I'm going to get on track this week. We're going to catch ourselves a dub. I can feel it coming. These dumpster fire cards are the ones, Liam, that I really feel like I just thrive on for some reason. Not the pay-per-views, but these greasy-ass little cards where I can find those little edges to abuse. And I think we've got some good ones here on this one. My guy joining us for the preview, sitting with us for 2 straight hours sharing knowledge, is none other than Liam Picks Fights, one of the most positive and best gamblers in the entire space. He's a dual threat. You guys make sure you support him. Give him a follow. If you haven't yet, Liam, how can everybody support you? Please let them know, handle, if you got other content coming up, Patreon, whatever. The floor is yours, my friend. Let the people know.
I appreciate you very much, brother. I will say this, guys. The things that I want to stress, number one, if you're not all tuckered out on your fight talk for today, then make sure you stop by Live to Thrive at 11:05 p.m. Eastern. We're talking Dana White Contender Series with my guy, Gordo Gambles. It's going to be on my channel later today. Liam Picks Fights. I am hoping to have 4,000 subscribers by the end of the night, guys. Been putting out really good information for years. I'm 25 subscribers away. It would mean a lot if you could go help me out to get to that 4,000 number. Been putting in the work and coming off a nice winning weekend. Hopefully that momentum will carry us. I will say the last few weeks of Contender Series, we've been crushing. The last few weeks of UFC, it was a rocky road leading to a very good outcome. And we're about 10 units up on the year right now on the UFC, and it's 4 years of profit in a row that we're working on. So Lord willing, we keep the ball rolling. I'll never promise you guys anything because this is a gamble every time. But what I will say is you'll find very few people that work as hard, that care as much, and that's what I try and bring to the table. So if you appreciate that stuff, go ahead and find me everywhere at Liam Picks Fights, and I appreciate you right back. Thank you, guys. And thank you, Clayton. It's always a pleasure, my brother.
Absolutely, Liam. Always a pleasure. Thank you again, my friend. Hey, everybody, do me a favor and hit the like button if you have not already. That's the easiest, cheapest way that you can support the show and keep the content rolling. Again, guys, make sure you check out those links in the description below, and make sure you use promo code DANA so that you can access the picks from the boys here at the home of fight. Take a look at their track record, plus 80 units on the year. Dana White's Contender Series is tomorrow night, so you're going to want access to those picks. Try it for free. Just give it a shot. That's all I'm saying. And of course, we will be back for the Total Takedown on Thursday. I don't know what the hell happened, Liam. Last week, I filmed the show. I uploaded it. And then I'm getting people hitting me up that are like, bro, where's half the picks? What happened? Half the video is just gone. So I don't know what happened, but I recorded this show and just the internet ate half of it. So I promise you guys, I'll give you a full total takedown this week. We'll make sure there's no technical difficulties. And then we'll be back for the undefeated post weigh-in show on Friday. Be good, whip some ass, and let's roll.